Hello, and we are live. This is our second watch party in a row, 2 days in a row. Yesterday, the Heartland Institute and many of our friends in the climate realist community got together to hang out and react live to the confirmation hearing for the Department of Energy and Chris Wright. And today we have we're going to try something even more ambitious today. There are two pretty good important hearings going on today, and they're happening at the same time. But we're going to try to figure it out technologically and give you full coverage of both of them. The premium one that we're here to see is the hearing for EPA Administrator nominee Lee Zeldin, former congressman from New York, and the other hearing going on at the same time, which has a lot of influence on climate and energy policy, is the hearing for Doug Burgum for the Department of the Interior. So if you missed yesterday's live stream, we were on for 3 hours. It was a heck of a lot of fun for us, and I think for a lot of people in the chat. You can find that at Heartland's YouTube page or looking for us on Rumble. It's very easy to find, and we're also broadcasting on X as well. So we are everywhere, and we had more than 3,000 people checking out our stream yesterday, and we hope to have as many as, or maybe even more, today. But the fun part about this is not to hear me. In fact, I'm the least important person to talk, commenting on these things, because we have our experts and special guests here today. With us, we have Linnea Lueken. She's research fellow at the Heartland Institute, which is she specializes in energy. She is a former employee of Big Oil. But now she has come over to the Heartland Institute, a national nonprofit think tank that specializes in all sorts of domestic policy, but we're known globally for our work on climate realism and sensible energy policy. We also have what is your title there? Is it the carbon? I can't see because of the yes, the climate hoax slayer, also known as the founder of junkscience.com, at junkscience on X, and he's also with E&E Legal. His name is Steve Malloy. He is probably the number one enemy of climate alarmism out there, because you see him if you watch any cable TV. You cannot not run into Steve Malloy or listen to radio. He's everywhere.
And I used to be in Big Coal.
There used to be a Big Coal.
Big Oil, Big Coal, and we'll see what Sterling's part.
So now we've come to the right place. Sterling Burnett, he is the director of the Robinson Center on climate and environmental policy at the Heartland Institute. He's been covering this topic for 20 years or so, Dr. Burnett. And you are muted. You're pulling a Jim Lakely by muting yourself. There you go.
Sadly enough, closer to 30 years. And I'm from big academia.
I was going to say big think, but
big think. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you don't know Sterling well enough, Steve. So we'll just say big academia. All right. And we plan to have other friends and allies and smart folks in here, and we're glad you're joining us for this watch party. And so we are going to have on screen. We have two producers in the background for us today. We have Andy Singer of the Heartland Institute, and we have Keely Drukala of the Heartland Institute. And unless something blows up technologically, we plan to have two screens. You don't see them right now, but we'll have two things on screen. We'll have the EPA hearing with the sound on, so you can hear, and we'll offer some comments in places where it warrants it. And then on the bottom screen, we plan to have the hearing for Doug Burgum going on with the captions on, so you can read that, listen to us, listen to Lee Zeldin. You may not have two TVs at home, but you're going to have two TVs here on this stream. So that's going to be pretty cool. So we will also have other experts planned to come in. A watch party is kind of designed where people can float in and float out. This is going to go on for hours, and so we're looking forward to seeing those people as well and getting their contributions. So, Steve Malloy, let me just say this: if you watched our watch party yesterday with for Chris Wright over at the Department of Energy, you might have been surprised to hear that some of the people on our panel we're not exactly the biggest cheerleaders as the hearing went on for Chris Wright, Steve Malloy being one of them. I don't want you to rehash all of that right now, but Steve, I want you to start off our little pregame discussion here, talking about, what do you expect to hear from Lee Zeldin in the EPA hearing, good or bad?
Well, I first want to start off by, complimenting you and all the Heartland staff that are putting this together. I think this is amazing. This is groundbreaking. This has ever been done before. I mean, monitoring two hearings at once and having live commentary, unbelievable. So I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
What do I expect to hear from Lee Zeldin? Well, so that, that's going to be really interesting because, as everyone knows or should know, he doesn't really have a lot of experience in the environment. Pretty much no experience, and especially no experience with EPA. But I know that he wants to implement the president's agenda, and the president's agenda is, most importantly, climate is a hoax. The president also wants to have clean air and clean water, which we already have, but I expect to hear a lot of genuflecting to clean air and clean water today. It's it's what everyone is going to do. I'm really kind of curious. I don't know how Zeldin can really substantively answer a lot of the questions that Democrats will throw at him just because he doesn't have a lot of experience. So maybe he's learned a lot in the past couple of months. I'm looking forward to it. I think it should be a lot of fun. I'm sure that we will spend a lot of our time correcting the bad ideas and stupid comments that the Democrats are throwing out there, and probably a fair amount of bad ideas and stupid comments from Republicans as well.
Can I ask Steve? You may know, I don't, and I probably should have looked this up. Was Zeldin on the House committee that has oversight over EPA when he served? Did he have?
No, but I think when he was a very young congressman, he had joined the Climate Solutions Caucus.
Oh God!
But that was 8 years ago. So maybe he's learned a lot since then. A lot of people had bad ideas 8 years ago. J.D. Vance had bad ideas about Trump 8 years ago, and he has gotten over that. So, I applaud people who grow and change. So we'll see. Although, we're not going to rehash yesterday, but based on what I heard yesterday, I'm always concerned about what these nominees are going to say.
Yeah.
Well, he probably had the highest hopes for right?
Yeah.
I thought that guy would knock it out of the park, but instead, I don't know, we got maybe a bunt or something.
Hey, I would call it a solid double, but we hashed that out yesterday.
Yeah, Jim, we got a case study here this morning. We had Vijay Jayaraj was going to join us from Southern India, but he was instead he's got a power outage. Just, think about that. That's what we look forward to this if we continue with this, getting rid of reliable, abundant energy. That's part of what the EPA has their hands in.
Yeah.
Let's hear the intro. Yeah.
Hold on one second. So I just wanted to introduce everybody. This is Gregory Wrightstone. He's executive director of the CO2 Coalition, one of our good friends and allies in the climate realist movement. We have right now the hearing for Zeldin and EPA has begun with Senator Capito from West Virginia chairing. Are you guys interested in watching and listening to her opening statement, or shall we wait for Lee Zeldin?
Well, let's listen to it for a little bit.
All right, let's listen.
I look forward to hearing Congressman Zeldin's plan to build on the work initiated by the first Trump administration, including the EPA, which took the first step to address legacy PFAS contaminants. And as the agency fulfills its obligation under our nation's bedrock environmental laws, the administrator should also take into account the affordability and electric reliability. Recently, the organization responsible for ensuring grid reliability found that more than half of the United States could experience rolling blackouts in the next decade because of the lack of reliable power capacity. Areas at risk and shortages include New England, the Mid-Atlantic, California, the Midwest, and the Great Plains. The reliability risk is due to the projected retirement of dispatchable power plants, compiled with a 15% increase in electricity demand over the next decade. Critically, this demand cannot be met solely with intermittent energy generation.
Right,
Spiking
so far.
energy costs and rolling blackouts are an unacceptable fact if the U.S. is to continue as a global leader. Actions that policymakers and regulators take now will determine whether America can thrive in an era with a cleaner environment, energy abundance, lower costs, and economic prosperity, or face it with a path of scarcity, inflation, and stagnation. I support that first option I named and believe our nominee does as well. I have confidence that the EPA under Congressman Zeldin's leadership will focus on the EPA's core mission to protect human health and the environment while acknowledging the critical role the agency plays in our economic and international leadership. In doing so, the EPA can make great progress in addressing key environmental challenges consistent with the authorities that Congress has given the agency. I look forward to discussing these issues with Congressman Zeldin today, and I now recognize my ranking member, Senator Whitehouse, for his opening statement.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Three things. First, I'd like to let everyone know that I like the chairman. That's a good start.
That's a good start.
That's a good start. And in that context, I would like to present her as the new chairman, this gavel.
Oh, thank you.
It was made in 1956 of wood from the old West Virginia State House.
Wow.
By the McKinley Vocational High School in Wheeling, West Virginia. It was presented to the then governor of West Virginia, Hewlett Smith, who kept it upon his departure. He was term limited out, and that was significant for, among other reasons, that it opened the office to the chairman's father,
It did.
Archmore. Madam Chair,
Thank you.
may you bang it in good health.
Very nice. Very nice. Thank you.
Second, we have indeed worked well together. We have together successfully advanced nuclear energy reform. We have together successfully encouraged and expanded carbon capture. And the WRDA and highway bills present big bipartisan opportunities for more work together. I even hope together we can revive permitting reform. So there is plenty of good opportunity. And as I speak of bipartisan matters, let me also welcome Senator Curtis, our newly elected member of this committee on the Republican side. Last, I want to show everyone this map of my home state. The bright green parts are parts that are destined to flood permanently, underwater, lost to the sea in decades ahead.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Congressman Zeldin will be familiar with this risk from his home Suffolk County.
Let's see, that's 7 inches
Fossil
per
fuel
century, I
pollution
think, isn't it?
Is the cause of that. It will change
It's
the
barely
map
above your
of my
ankles
state,
in 100 years.
and it will do us crippling economic damage. As I see it, we've been through three
And it's from
eras. of
groundwater
climate. First was
withdrawal,
the era of
most-
science, and scientists, our headlights, did their job, predicting accurately what was going to happen. NASA scientists, academic scientists, IPCC scientists, Exxon scientists, they did their job. Next came the era of politics, where it was our job to heed the warnings of science and head off those dangers. We failed badly, and for the worst of all reasons.
They failed to follow the
Come to a
science.
massive, deliberate campaign.
If the
of
flooding
lies and
takes his
corruption
home
by the
with it, it might be
polluters
worth it.
themselves. That failure ushers in now an era of consequences. Consequences we should have headed off, but didn't. It's beginning.
Like increasing crop
Inflation,
growth,
as goods
crop
become harder to
production,
grow, produce, and ship in upended weather patterns. It's
decreasing
upon
of
us
heat
already in
waves.
forward-looking industries like insurance,
Upended
Good
weather
luck
patterns, so we
with
won't
property
have floods or
insurance in
droughts. Or,
Florida and
or,
California. The
Everything
worst
will be
danger
reversed.
is
Yeah,
systemic
everything will be
economic
reversed. All that
crashes.
stuff will stop in the
One,
future.
widely warned of in economic literature, is the carbon bubble,
But we,
bursting when the international oil cartel or the massive government subsidies cease propping up fossil fuel, and stranded assets lose all value, and the resulting shock cascades into the global economy.
oh
The other,
no.
upon us already, is climate risk, making property insurance unaffordable or unavailable.
Will he
which in
save
turn
deniers?
makes mortgages unavailable, which in turn
I can't help when I'm
crashes
watching him but
property
picture Mr.
values.
Bill and wonder where Ringmaster Sluggo is.
Yeah.
Remember this map. Before all that land
We
went
should have
underwater,
made a bingo card.
it would become uninsurable.
Yeah, we should have. I mean,
That's still
Senator
the
White
problem.
Club, I mean, White
Big
House,
storms.
really hates
And there's a whole
Heartland
critical
Institute. He has
uninsurability
attacked us
crisis
by
now.
name repeatedly on the floor of the
Economists
Senate.
already mapped
So,
and predicted a
He's
close-
called for
Forgive me if
imprisonment, I
I'm
believe.
a little-
He's
I'm a
called
little
for
salty.
imprisonment.
Like the 2008
yeah, I know. Yeah, he wants us in jail. So forgive me if I get a little salty. I'll try to mute myself before I
Wildfire
use
risk,
profanity.
like we're seeing right now in Los Angeles, launching the same insurance to mortgage to property values collapse. Let's be clear. We are in this
John,
perilous place.
I think that our
because a
UK
campaign
viewers
of
are
lies
welcome
and corruption
to
and
begin a
pollution
drinking game, but it
delivered
might be a little
deliberately
bit
and
too
at
early
industrial
here.
scale by the fossil fuel industry was accomplished through an armada of paid front groups. And so we're clear, it's not just me warning of significant economic harms ahead. I will circulate to all colleagues, lucky you, this compendium of the published warnings for you and all of your staffs to review. This threat is real.
Maybe someone
And
could.
If a sharp-eyed cabin boy like
Lately, I didn't
Linnea
get
one
my
of our-
big well
night
checked this
to
month.
see the
Our
iceberg
climate
again,
change
you'd expect
reconsidered.
him to do whatever he could
One of our
to
guys should
fight his
just
way to the captain's table
drop
in
the
the
climate
fancy
change
dining room and
reconsidered
warn
booklet. We will
of the
share
impending
this.
disaster. So please understand.
Golly, if
how
only
I
somebody
feel
had told them that
sense of
climate was
urgency
in
that
crisis.
I
You know,
feel.
they've never heard
I
this
am
before.
confident that the chairman would equal me in energy and determination for any similar dangers to her mountain state. And so it is through this lens of urgency that I approach this nomination hearing. President Trump has called climate change a hoax. While running for president, he met with fossil fuel industry executives and told them they should give him $1 billion in exchange for his reversing the rules that protect our air and water and limit the pollution that is driving climate change. And indeed, fossil fuel companies and
CO2
executives
is
lavished
not
millions of
pollution.
dollars on the Trump campaign and affiliated organizations. These special interests now expect a return on their political investment. They expect a reversal of
Zeldin
the
could
already
reduce the
limited
pollution if he just shut
protections we
up.
have for our air and water. And make no mistake, not only would reversing these protections harm our air, water, public health, and climate, doing so would also
Our
cost
air
Americans
and
money,
water are
as they'll
cleaner
be forced to
today than they
spend
have been
more
in 200
to fuel
years.
their cars, to buy
And
their
continuing
groceries,
to get
heat
better.
and cool their homes.
Those are the facts.
That's money that would go directly from every hardworking American's wallet into the accounts of billionaire fossil fuel barons and giant oil companies. The question then for Mr. Zeldin here before us as President Trump's nominee to run the Environmental Protection Agency is simple. Will he follow the science and the economics and protect our air, water, and climate? Or will he merely be a rubber stamp for looters and polluters who are setting the Trump agenda?
Yeah, rubber
I must
stamp.
say that his role at polluter-funded organizations such as the America First Policy Institute and America
Stop getting
First Works,
Steve's hopes up,
his long
Senator
list of
White.
Trump-affiliated consulting
White House.
clients, and his anti-climate op-eds
You're
paid
gonna
for
get it.
by
He's
dark
gonna be
money
disappointed.
organizations do not
Yeah, but
give
the
me
thing is, the
confidence
polluters.
Wait, he's talking about dark money. That's us.
confirmed to lead EPA. I really want this to work. That is how high the stakes are. I am not here trying to score points. I'm here trying to steer us away from what I see as
And
a
cripple our
calamity ahead.
economy.
I will therefore be watching closely today to see if Congressman Zeldin
Him
is
seeing
able to
it doesn't make it
differentiate
true.
himself in any
What I
substantive way
see.
The
from
polluters
the
are on his
polluter
side.
agenda
Big
and the
oil,
economic
they want
crashes
what he
likely to
wants,
ensue.
right?
Thank you, Madam Chair.
He said that he's
Thank you, Senator. Thank you.
he's
for the
looking to
gavel.
see
I
if
just like
Zeldin
the-
is going to
I very much
do the
I'm
climate
actually from the northern part of the
polluter
state
agenda
where it was
and
made.
continue the climate crisis. So
I'm now going to turn to Senator Barrasso,
Let's
who
keep
is
our
going to
fingers
be
crossed.
introducing Congressman Zeldin.
Oh, boy.
Thank you very
Barrasso is
much,
gonna
Chairman
be
Capito,
bleak.
Ranking Member, White House, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing me to be here today to introduce Congressman Lee Zeldin, who has been nominated to be the administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. EPA is very important to Wyoming and to the nation. It's responsible for protecting our air, our water, and our communities. Americans deserve clean air and clean water.
Whatever
They
did
also
we do
deserve
before we had an
clear
EPA?
rules and common sense from the government. Over the last 4 years, they've gotten neither. The EPA has pushed policies that kill jobs in Wyoming and raise the cost for families across the nation. It's also pursued rules that shut down power generation and
Barrasso is
threaten
also in
electric
favor of
reliability.
killing jobs in Wyoming.
Americans should be able
Yeah.
to take for granted that the lights will go on when they flip the switch. They should know that those making the rules understand that their livelihoods depend on a balanced and measured approach. Instead, the approach over the last 4 years has been based solely on radical environmentalism. Congressman Zeldin will correct the course of the EPA. He's been highly motivated from a young age, graduated from law school at age 23. He has over 20 years of military
always
experience
hated the
and
idea of
service, and it's
balance.
still
I want
he's still
accurate.
counting those because Lieutenant Colonel Zeldin has a range of experience
Fair
in
and
the Army.
balanced news.
He's
No,
a
fair
military
and accurate.
intelligence
Just
officer,
accurate.
a prosecutor and military magistrate. He's a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, where he served in the Army's 82nd Airborne Division as a paratrooper, and just last weekend was on Army Reserve duty. His public service doesn't end there. In addition to his time in the U.S. Congress, he served in the New York State Senate. He knows firsthand how important it is for the federal government to be a partner to states rather than an out-of-touch regulator. This is the dedication and understanding that Lee Zeldin will bring to the EPA. His experience shows that he knows how to balance multiple priorities. He understands that we must be good stewards of the environment without crippling the economy. Many organizations, both public and private, agree that Lee is the right person for the job. One of those organizations is the National Association of Clean Water Agencies. In a letter to the committee, the association said, he has shown a willingness to engage with a broad spectrum of stakeholders to address pressing issues. This approach is critical for achieving EPA's mission in a way that balances environmental protection, they say, and pragmatic public policy implementation. His strong support from his community back home. The Long Island Water Conference has said, quote, we are offering our strong support for fellow Long Islander and New Yorker Lee Zeldin. They go on to say, we believe that Mr. Zeldin's experience will provide a balanced approach to the regulatory process. This will ultimately, they say, provide effective protection of public health and the environment. And reading this about a balanced approach reminded me, and Cynthia might have been there as a young girl, in 1963, John Kennedy, President of the United States, came to Wyoming. He came with Stuart Udall, who was his Secretary of Interior. It was a conservation tour of the West. Stuart Udall, the Interior Department is now, building is named after him, and his son Tom served with many of us on this very committee, sat right there where Senator Padilla is sitting right now. So I brought this picture that has been hanging on my wall in the office in D307, and it's John Kennedy in the field house of the University of Wyoming addressing the largest indoor arena that we had and the largest standing only crowd in 1963 as part of his conservation tour. And what John Kennedy said that day, he said, we must maintain a living balance between man's actions and nature's reactions. And that's the kind of job that I believe that Lee Zeldin is going to do for our nation at the EPA, maintain a living balance. So I share this organization, the Long Island Water Conference, their confidence that Lee Zeldin will lead the EPA in a more balanced and even-handed direction. So I say, Lee, congratulations on your nomination. I look forward to working with you on these important issues. I once again thank the committee for letting me join you today. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. As a former chair of this committee yourself, we welcome you back
Na-
anytime. So we're going to
Nature
switch
doesn't
seats
have
here
balance.
and
It's in
ask the
constant
nominee to come
flux.
forward.
Right, exactly.
Somebody needs to take this to get the sign. We didn't want your first utterances to be as a John Barresso imitator, so we wanted to make sure we had the right name. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Zeldin, and I'll look forward to your opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, and all the distinguished members of this committee. It's been an honor to meet with all of you to learn more about your highest priorities. I look forward to working with all senators on this committee, on both sides of the aisle, to tackle the most pressing issues facing our country. I humbly sit before you nominated to serve as the 17th Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency. The American people made their voices heard in November, giving President Trump a mandate to lead our nation to prosperity. I'm grateful that the President-elect is giving me the opportunity to lead the EPA at this critical time. Our mission is simple but essential: to protect human health and the environment. We must do everything in our power to harness the greatness of American innovation, with the greatness of American conservation and environmental stewardship. We must ensure we are protecting the environment while also protecting our economy. Throughout my life, I've been privileged to hold such titles as congressman and state senator and lieutenant colonel, but none has meant more to me than husband, son, and father. While one of my identical twin daughters, Ariana, is now back at college, I'm excited to be joined here today by my wife, Diana, and our daughter, Michaela, as well as my mother, Meryl. The American people need leaders who can find common ground to solve the urgent issues we face. I want my daughters, your loved ones, and every child across our country to thrive in a world with clean air, clean water, and boundless opportunity. If confirmed, I pledge to enthusiastically uphold the EPA's mission. I will foster a collaborative culture within the agency, supporting career staff who have dedicated themselves to this mission. I strongly believe we have a moral responsibility to be good stewards of
So
our
much for draining
environment
the
for
swamp.
generations to come. It's been so motivating to see the tremendous talent stepping up to serve in the EPA. I couldn't be more excited to partner with our EPA team nationwide to
EPA staff
exceptionally
was the
serve the
resistance
American
that
public.
torpedoed the last Trump
I had
administration.
the honor of
Yeah.
working with many of you when I represented New York's 1st Congressional District. My district on the eastern end of Long Island was unique in that it was almost completely surrounded by water. My constituents took environmental issues very seriously, and I developed a record in Congress fighting hard and with great success advancing their local priorities. I worked across party lines to preserve the Long Island Sound and Plum Island. I supported key legislation that became historic bipartisan success stories, like the Great American Outdoors Act and Senator Sullivan and White House's Save Our Seas Act to clean up plastics from our oceans. Whether it was leading the fight for Sea Grant, combating PFAS in drinking water, voting for the Lautenberg Chemical Safety Act, or supporting
Yeah,
clean
you're right,
energy
Steve. His
projects
biggest
on Long
challenge
Island,
is going to be
I was
fighting
proud
off
to do my
the
part
deep
to
state
secure these
EPA, not
environmental
actually
victories.
doing the other things.
Georgetown
themselves.
University and the Luger Center
Well,
consistently ranked me one of the most
listening to
bipartisan members
listening
of
to all the
Congress.
things he
And
just
to that end, I
supported
joined the
a
Bipartisan
Lautenberg
Climate Solutions
Act.
Caucus
Oh, geez,
to focus on
it might be
tackling the
suppressing his own
challenges of a changing
green
climate.
inclinations.
Confirmed, I want to work with all of you to address the unique
It
environmental
seems he wants to
issues
ingratiate
facing your
himself to
state.
the environmental leftists at the
Not only do I
EPA, and
want
it's
to
not going to work.
partner with you, I want to learn from you. I ask you all what a former
Well, like
administrator
yesterday
asked
with Wright,
the
we've got to hope
great
this is
chairman of this
just,
committee from my home
words for
state,
the confirmation
Senator
hearing.
Daniel Patrick Moynihan. What advice would you
It's
give
going to be
me
interesting
as
to
I
see
undertake to lead
Senator
EPA?
Whitehouse go after him, hammer and
I look
tongs.
forward
That
to
should
having
be
this
fun.
discussion with each of you.
I would never bring my
EPA must be
family
better
to
stewards of
see the
tax
crap
dollars,
that goes on
honor
these
corporate
things.
federalism, and be
I
transparent
mean,
and accountable
if my
to
mother was at
Congress
one of
and the
these
public.
hearings with me, it would be
American
like,
people
you
elected
don't say that about
President
my
Trump
son.
last November.
Yeah, you wouldn't bring your family to a house of ill
How
repute, so
they
you
were
shouldn't bring them to the
accountable
Senate.
in their struggle to
Exactly.
make ends meet. Too many of our fellow Americans are trapped in poverty and desperate for a whole of government approach to give them a hand up.
Ugh.
We can and we must protect our precious environment without suffocating
I
the
hate that
economy.
whole of government
A
line.
big part of this
And
will
I think,
require
and I
building
hate the idea that the
effective
government should be giving
collaboration
everyone a hand
to
up.
promote
It should be
common
staying
sense,
out of people's
smart
way.
regulation
Yeah.
that will allow
If you want to get rid of
American
poverty, you
innovation
need economic
to lead
growth,
the world.
not government
If
growth.
confirmed,
Not handouts.
under the EPA, with my leadership, we will prioritize
No, you can
compliance
tell this is
with
written
budget
by
I
20
believe
or
in the
maybe
rule of
30
law.
somethings
And I want to
who
work with people
like
to
took
ensure
maybe
each
have a
of their
master's
part
degree in government or
protect our
something.
environment.
You know,
Success
Well,
is
it was written by some PR group, right?
Yeah.
Some
Bring this
some
world
PR
forward
person
we
said,
found it.
"What will make
I
you
want every
sound
child
nice,
in this nation, including my daughters
acceptable?"
and your children, to inherit a world with clean air, clean water, and a thriving
clean
economy.
air, clean water.
This mission must transcend
Genuflect.
politics, and I look forward to working with all of you to achieve it. I thank you, Chairman Capito, Ranking Member Whitehouse, and all the members of this committee.
Steve, I
eager
think
to
this would
answer
be a
your
good question
questions
for
and
you
discuss
to
the issues
address.
facing your constituents.
What's that?
Thank you.
What is the difficulty or
We're now
process
ready to
for an
begin with
EPA
the
director or
resolution.
DOE director to fire combative or subversive employees in their own departments?
What's very difficult, there are all sorts of union protections, and the unions are equipped with the lawyers.
To begin, this committee has
I think the way to handle people like that is just to take their work away from them. In the New York City schools, they used to have this thing called a sort of a rubber room. You know, they would just basically take people's work away, wouldn't let them teach, just put them in this room. And I think that's what you got to do with employees that are not cooperating, which is going to be the vast majority of employees at EPA.
Yes.
Do you agree to ensure the testimony briefings, documents, and
Dave Schneer has a
other forms of
suggestion.
communications of information are provided to this committee and its staff and other appropriate committees in a timely manner?
Yes.
Thank you.
You go to the
Finally,
weather station in
you know
Barrow.
any matters which you
Except
may
sadly,
or
we
may
still
not
we
have
still pay
disclosed
them
may
while they're in the
issue
rubber
a
room,
conflict
right?
of interest
Yeah.
if you are confirmed.
No.
All right.
There should be an EPA
I will
regional office in
do
Aleutians.
questioning, and then I'll
Send
go
them
to
there.
the ranking member.
Yeah. Let me say
In my opening
real quick
statement,
before we
I
get into the
talked about
questioning here that
reliability.
the plan is to have the two
and
streams going at the same
affordability
time.
issues
We're having a little bit of
concerning
technical difficulty with
basic
the
features
muted
here.
stream of interior.
During the
It looks a
last
little
4
choppy.
years,
We'll keep it up there to see how
is
plausible it is to keep it going, but we will try our best. And if you
including the
guys
Clean
in the
Power
chat are
Plan
watching both,
2.0, which was
you can leave
intentionally
some
designed
information about the
to impose
interior
massive new costs
hearing
for reliable
here that we can also
coal-fired
talk
and natural gas plants in a deliberate effort to shut these plants down. Unsurprisingly, over the same period of time, the cost of energy skyrocketed 23% over the last 4 years. Now, our nation's electric reliability experts, the North American Electric Reliability Corporation, forecasts over half of the United States could face potential electrical shortages and blackouts in the next decade. This is a dire situation on the reliability. This demand is driven by our onshoring of our manufacturing and powering data centers and other things to win the artificial intelligence race. Congressman Zeldin, as you oversee and implement the EPA's statutory obligations to protect public health and the environment, will you also ensure that the agency takes into account the electric reliability and energy affordability impacts on businesses and American families that needed to keep their lights on and to heat their homes?
Yes, absolutely.
What is your vision for fulfilling the EPA's statutory mission, particularly in the context of getting the agency reoriented back to the basics of protecting communities from air, water, and chemical pollutions and cleaning up contaminated sites? What ideas do you have as moving forward?
Chairman, it's important that the EPA is honoring our obligations under the law, fulfilling the historic landmark laws that are on the books, like the Clean Air Act, the Clean Water Act, the Safe Drinking Water Act. It's important that the EPA is accountable and transparent to all of you here on this committee. It's important that we are working closely in collaboration with career staff at the EPA and working closely with other agencies where there's overlapping jurisdiction to make sure that we are following our new obligations under the law as Congress enacts new laws moving forward, to make sure that we are abiding by the Administrative Procedures Act, that I as administrator I'm not prejudging outcomes, that I'm making sure that our actions are durable, that they are able to withstand scrutiny, and at the end of the day, I'm able to sit before you at further hearings and to be able to account for my actions as administrator and our actions as an agency. I look forward to working with all of you in order to make sure that Congress's intent is filled, that we also honor the Loper-Bright decision that was just issued by the Supreme Court to make sure that it is, in fact, Congress's intent that is being implemented, and it's not us as an agency filling in any gaps, however we might see fit. It requires a close collaboration, not just internally within the agency, but with each and every one of you as well.
Thank you. Thank you. And I should have welcomed your wife, Diana, and Michaela, and your mother, Meryl. And we miss Ariana, but I hope she's watching it from afar. I want to talk about PFAS. West Virginians have had firsthand experience with PFAS contamination and pollution. Everybody does, but we've had it a little more. I think we had a little bit earlier, discovered earlier. And I want to continue. We tried last session to get some leading legislative efforts to try to protect essential service providers and American taxpayers from costly litigation and liability. It's a very complicated issue, as you know, but it speaks to one of the core missions of the EPA, which is safe drinking water and clean water. I understand that your New York district has actually experienced the negative effects of PFAS pollution. If confirmed, how do you plan to address the growing challenge of PFAS pollution through the EPA's existing authorities?
Chairman, when I was in the House, I was a member of the PFAS task force, also voted for the PFAS Action Act. EPA has an important responsibility to make sure that our obligations are implemented correctly. That is something that through our enforcement and compliance, we have to ensure that we are moving the needle all across this entire country. There are cleanup projects, large and small, across America where many Americans have been waiting decades, generations for that leadership and that action. So working with all of you to deal with these issues in your home state is something that will be top priority of mine.
Thank you. I'll
So
turn
this
it over to the
PFAS
next member.
is a bunch of,
Thanks.
it's much
Before I
ado
get
about
to my
nothing. This
questions,
stuff is inert. No one's ever been harmed by PFAS in the environment. It's ubiquitous. The chemicals are designed to be inert. That's why they're so widely used and ubiquitous. And we have these detection methods now. We can detect things to parts per trillion. It's crazy. No one even notices this stuff. Yet we've turned it into what's going to be a multi-billion-dollar cleanup.
A lot of work into this when I was
It's
chair of the budget committee, and I'd also
Welcome,
like to
Craig Rucker of CFACT. Thank
Yeah.
you very much for joining us here.
Thanks for joining, Craig.
Pleasure to be on.
PFAS is going to be the next boondoggle super fun.
Yeah.
Responsibility and
Endocrine
everywhere.
disruptors on steroids.
It's everywhere. It's ridiculous.
And finally,
That and
January
microplastics.
15th,
Terrible.
Oh, yeah, well, there you go.
Submitted by the Climate Action Campaign and signed by over.
We're all
70
Borgs because we've all got
environmental organizations
microplastics.
concerning the nomination.
Without objection.
Great. Thank
So
you
ordered,
very much,
yes.
Chairman. Mr. Zeldin, welcome. As we discussed when we met, I said I was going to ask you some really basic, no tricks questions about climate change. So
Here
let
we
me just
go.
start.
This should be good.
First, as a matter of law, is carbon dioxide a pollutant?
No.
Thank you, Senator, and I enjoyed our meeting with your team as well, and I look forward to working with all of you. As far as carbon dioxide emitted from you during that question, I would say no. As far as carbon dioxide that is emitted in larger masses that we hear concern about from scientists as well as from Congress,
The answer
that's
is still no.
something that certainly needs to be focused on for the EPA.
And
It's
as a
the
matter
same
of law,
carbon
it
dioxide.
is a designated pollutant, correct?
Senator,
It is not a
while
designated
the carbon dioxide is not named as one of the 6 in the
Criteria
Clean
pollutants.
Air Act,
Exactly.
the EPA has been treating it as such.
Yeah, because of its.
That's an excellent political
Correct, yes,
answer, actually.
What effect, briefly and in layman terms, I know you're not a scientific expert, what effect are
But he
carbon
is.
dioxide emissions from fossil fuel combustion having in the atmosphere?
Senator, while I am someone who believes strongly that we should work with the scientists, leaving the science to the scientists, the policy to the policymakers, and that we all work together. I don't sit before you as a scientist. Fortunately, at EPA, we do have many talented scientists who provide that research. They have that talent to be able to tell us exactly what the metrics are of their research.
It's easier just to
Generally,
say
in layman's
hoax.
terms, what effects do these carbon dioxide emissions have when they enter the atmosphere?
Trapping heat, Senator.
And what effect, again, briefly in layman's terms, does methane leakage from fossil fuel production and transport have in the atmosphere?
Same.
Heat trapping also. And what effect, I'm from the ocean state, so I've got to ask this one. What effect are carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel combustion having in the oceans?
Well, the emissions of greenhouse gases trap heat, Senator. As far as your concern that you expressed at the onset of your testimony, as you showed that map of Rhode Island, and as you suggested, and as I mentioned, as I represented the district on the east end of Long Island, rising sea levels are concerns where I'm from as well. And it's one of the reasons why the federal government, through the Army Corps, had to invest in a Army Corps of Engineer project with the revetment of Montauk Lighthouse, with fear that if we did not do that, that Montauk Lighthouse, and due to erosion, would be collapsing into the ocean.
Is it correct that the trapped heat from carbon dioxide emissions and methane in the atmosphere is heating up the oceans? In fact, 90% of the heat goes into the oceans, and that is what is producing the sea level rise you just discussed.
That is what the scientists tell me, Senator.
Yep. And are the oceans also absorbing about 30%
See,
of the carbon
that's a good
dioxide
dodge.
itself?
I
and
give him
therefore
credit right
chemically
here. I
turning
think he's
more acid
actually
in
answering
measurable
good to
clear
get through
ways.
this committee.
Senator, as far as any specific numbers, I have to defer to the research of the scientists.
But generally, that is happening.
Yes,
There
Senator.
is a link between the fossil fuel emissions and the acidification.
To
of
say
the
that's what they say.
Yes, Senator, I
That's
do
what they
understand
say.
that there's litigation here that to a certain extent I'm not going to be able to comment on as EPA administrator, but to the general question, yes, Senator.
Steve is
So we have
smiling. This is
1.5
great.
degree
Well, no,
threshold, and why is
I'm
that
crying
important?
on the inside because
Senator, again, as far
you
as
know, this could be
being
much
a
better,
he's here and
right?
able to,
It can be,
also
but you must
be
admit it's a step
putting
up from yesterday.
numbers. That is something where
Yeah,
I
I
have
mean,
to
he-
defer to the
well, he
technical
buys into it, then he defers and dodges.
provide that
You know,
advice on an ongoing basis, whether or not we're hitting numbers at any given time.
If you are confirmed, what are the key either climate or oceans tipping points that would concern you?
oh my God.
As far as the tipping point, well, Senator, I think that as you put up a map of your district, I could, and your state, I could put up a map of mine, and we could do this across the entire country. As long as that concern exists, where there is in fact rising sea levels, and I hear it from both sides of the aisle. Senator Collins spoke about it in the context of
Pop in
Maine.
one last question before my time runs out. I'm sorry. Are we now on a pathway to climate safety, or do we need to do more to reduce
No.
carbon emissions in
Oh,
order
this
to
is
get
waiting for this
this
one.
pathway?
Senator, United States emissions have been going down over the course of the last couple of decades. Unfortunately, there are other countries where it is not going in the same direction. And I would say that we will have never done enough to ensure that our water and our air is clean, safe, and healthy. Whatever we do every day to achieve this objective, we need to wake up the next day looking for ways to do more.
Oh, geez. I hate that
Climate
coming from a
safety.
regulator.
Sheldon Whitehouse,
That's
are we
terrible.
now or have we ever been in a stable, livable climate?
Climate safety is a new one. We have a new term, ladies
I
and
mean,
gentlemen.
doesn't it kill you how none of these people know what they're talking about, except for Sheldon? And Sheldon knows what he's trying to do, but nobody else has any idea what they're talking about. They know nothing about the environment,
So we'll go to Senator.
and they remain impervious, and they don't want to know anything.
Thank you, Chair.
That may be true, but I do think that there's some wisdom to trying to get through the committee. There was enough there in my mind that he was evasive because he didn't want to answer and give Sheldon Whitehouse what he wanted. So I'm encouraged by some of these
Well,
responses.
Look,
I'm
he handled some of
surprised.
the, he handled a bit of that better than we saw yesterday, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm very, very surprised that Zeldin handled it that well. I thought for sure he was going to roll right over on all of those. So,
Well, and it's
I'm
not
happy to
over
see
yet. I mean, I thought
Yeah.
Sheldon Whitehouse would come at him with direct questions like they've done with Gina McCarthy. You know, how much carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere? And you know, Gina McCarthy had no idea.
Yeah.
But this is not over. So
Yeah, I love it, Steve. It's starting out great, but it's not over yet. We can still lose.
is Maisie Corona on this committee,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
I hope so.
or Kirsten Gillibrand?
Diametrically opposed. I expected stronger answers yesterday.
Yeah, I did
I
too.
really had no expectation for this whole thing with the EPA administrator. In fact, I kind of was bracing myself for total
Yeah.
capitulation, but I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing that. What I'm seeing is evasiveness that I think some people who are shrewd might want to do. Again, his objective here is to get through the committee.
Right.
And once he's in power, he can, pretty much do what he wants. So I don't think he damaged himself here.
Maybe somebody
Evasiveness.
on the transition team made a phone call last night after the energy hearing.
Evasiveness that would make a
This is a
Supreme
great
Court
comment
nominee
on the
proud.
screen right now.
Yes, exactly.
Leave a lot of ambiguity. And here's one portion that I wanted to chat with you about because I believe it's particularly instructive should you be confirmed. Quote, Finally, it is also instructive that the Clean Water Act expressly protects the primary responsibility and rights of states to prevent, reduce, and eliminate pollution, and to plan the development and use of land and water resources. It is hard to see how the state's role in regulating water resources would remain primary if the EPA had jurisdiction over anything defined by the presence of water, unquote.
Those wetlands.
Now,
Yeah, not mud puddles, but navigable
I was
waters.
tempted to bring the poster, but in previous definitions, as they've gone back and forth, there's one that Sackett was based on actually, or that would be relevant to Sackett, where the entire state of North Dakota was basically a federal wetland. We're a semi-arid state.
Exactly.
With badlands and big prairies. Should you be confirmed, it would be really good if the administrator took this decision and the legislative history behind it and start a rulemaking process post-Sackett with the assumption that states have primacy and primary responsibility for water within their states, not the federal government. How do you intend to sort of approach that? Because this
It's
post-Sackett
important.
WOTUS definition
Very
is going to be
important.
really, really important.
Yes, Senator. With any rulemaking, as you know, I'm not allowed to prejudge outcomes going in. And it's important that corners aren't cut where durability is sacrificed. Laws are written by Congress, and there are cases that have come out from the Supreme Court that provide the EPA with clear guidance on how we must do our job under the law. It is important that when you're going back to your home state and you're speaking to your farmers, that you are able to, with confidence, be able to explain to them that the federal government is doing our part so they can define what waters of the U.S. are without them having to go hire an attorney or someone else, pay a lot of money to ensure compliance. So I will make sure that I'm doing my part, that the EPA is honoring the decision of Sackett and any future laws to come out of Congress. That is
How
my
much of
commitment
North
to you.
Dakota is
I know
owned by
that
the
was
federal
important when
government?
I met with Senator Sullivan as he was speaking about Alaska and wetlands and so many other people on this
Anybody
committee.
know?
So I look forward to working with you on that.
Top of
No,
my
I,
head, I don't.
that great answer. I
Probably
appreciate
most
that
of it.
very much. One of the things that concerns me is
I don't
when I've
think so.
heard
I don't think North
real
Dakota
No, I
is
don't think it is actually.
heavily subscribed to, say, Nevada or Alaska or
glorious,
someplace
you
like
have
that.
two agencies that get involved, the permitting side on
Well,
the Corps of
according
Engineers
to
and EPA.
according to
One of the things in terms of
AI
durability that I
on
heard
Google,
from
about
the
3.9% of
previous
North Dakota
administration or the current
is
administration was,
federally
we're gonna
owned.
create a durable rule.
Mm.
And I think the way to do that is
So
to
there
make
really should
sure
be
that
almost no waters in
well,
the
we-
United States in North
law is
Dakota.
clear now. The
Yeah, here's the
definition-
issue though. The Clean Water Act actually signified there should be navigable waters are under control.
Yeah. No, I got it.
But of course, they expanded that until Sackett to be just about any ditch or mud
Right,
puddle.
right.
As a result of that, I think the question, interesting with Kramer especially, because he's not a climate realist in it by any match. He's actually almost on the other side on this, but he's excellent on federal lands, as we just heard. And I think that that's an important issue, and I'm glad
Unfortunately,
it was
we
raised at
face
this
a
hearing.
reality where many
Even
farmers,
navigable waters, though, shouldn't all
whether or
fall
not
under
their land,
federal
not just
purview. If
farmers,
they don't
obviously,
cross
but a lot of
state
people
borders,
don't know
if it's
whether or not
purely
their land
interstate, it should be
has
left to the
waters of the
state.
US on it. And I would say that that is a failure on the part of the federal government. You should be able to go to your landowners and they should be able to, with confidence, be able to tell you without having to ask questions whether or not waters of the U.S. are on their property.
Well, thank you for that. I can tell you North Dakota farmers are pretty bright. They know, it's just that the bureaucrats didn't. And now hopefully the Supreme Court's cleared that up. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Sanders.
Thank you.
Yep.
Congratulations
Hey, here we go.
on your new title here. Mr. Zeldin, thanks so much. for
How
coming to
can
the
we
office.
implement
Really enjoyed
socialism
our
in the
chat.
United States?
Mr. Zeldin, 2024, as you know, was the hottest year in recorded history. The past 10 years have been the hottest 10 years on record.
He and
We
Boris
have
Johnson must
seen
get
in
their hair
recent
done in
years
the same place.
unprecedented fires in the West Coast and in Canada, and we're seeing the horrific situation in LA right now. We have seen unprecedented flooding in China displaced millions of people there.
That's our fault.
Unprecedented drought in Brazil, Africa, and elsewhere.
They
In
should shut
Southern
down their
Africa,
coal plants.
people are dying because of the drought
Unprecedented
and
flooding in
their
China,
inability to
unless you
grow
look
crops.
back past 10 years.
Billions of people have been sweltering in Europe and elsewhere.
El Nino's a
in
bitch.
Unprecedented heat
And,
waves.
and the question
In
is,
the midst
A
of
full
all of
75
that,
degree
President-elect
Fahrenheit heat wave.
Trump has said that climate change is a hoax. You will be, if confirmed, one of the leading spokespeople in this country, representing us throughout the entire world. Do you agree with President-elect Trump that climate change is a hoax?
Good question.
Well, first off, Senator, it was great to meet with you as well. I believe that climate change is real, as I told you. As far as President Trump goes, the context that I've heard him speak about it was with a criticism of policies that have been acted because of climate change, and I think that he's concerned about the economic costs of some policies where there's a debate and a difference of opinion between the parties.
No, that's wrong.
I think he has called
Trump
it a
has
hoax
gone through
time and time and
science.
time again. And I would just say for the record that, and let me ask you this question, all right? Some of us have used the word existential threat.
No, sir. I
What
do
we're
not believe it's
seeing
an
in
existential
LA
threat.
right now
That's the
is
simple answer.
apocalyptic. And the other
Apocalyptic.
terrible
Terrible.
weather disturbances, whether in the Midwest of this country,
Climate
whether in many
crisis.
states that are represented right here.
Sienna-Type
Unprecedented in my
dogs
small state of
picking up.
Vermont, we've been hit over and over again in recent years. Our state capital, Montpelier, was underwater recently in a way that we have not seen. Would you describe climate change as an existential threat, meaning that there must be an urgency to get our act together, to address it?
No.
Senator, we
No.
must, with urgency, be addressing these issues. And today, as we talk about any way at all that the EPA can do its part to make sure that our air and water are cleaner, healthier,
Staying
and
on the
safer.
one, look, EPA has enormous responsibility.
He's
over
better at
enormous
this than
numbers.
Wright was.
I'm focusing on picking up what Senator Whitehouse said. I worry very much. Do you have kids?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. I worry. Many of us have kids. We have grandchildren. This is serious stuff. This is beyond politics, my friends. This is the future of
Beyond
humanity.
politics.
it's about the children.
And if we do not get our act together, and that is not just the United States. of
My
America,
friends.
it's
You
international
don't have
stuff.
friends on that
So let me
committee.
ask you another difficult question.
Comrades,
If
maybe.
tomorrow, magically, the United States Congress did all of the right things, that would not be enough. Climate change is a global crisis. It requires the cooperation of
It's not a
China,
crisis. It's
Russia,
a
Europe,
global
Latin
issue.
America,
It's a
etc.
hoax.
Are you prepared to represent the United States aggressively with some of your colleagues in reaching out
No.
to countries all over the world to cut carbon emissions?
I'll
Senator,
reach out
it's
and help them
very
develop,
important
sir.
for I as
Become
administrator
wealthier,
of
so
EPA,
the environment's
whether
better.
traveling to the G7 or the G20 or elsewhere, to be reaching out to these other countries to make sure that there is a pressure on other nations to do their part as well. And it is my job to stay up at night, to lose sleep at night, to make sure that we are making our air and our water cleaner.
All right. I know it's fashionable to be beating up on China. It's good politics. They are now the major carbon pollutant in the world. We have historically had that role. We're now number 2.
They're his friends.
We're not going to
They're his
solve this
friends.
crisis without working with China. Are you and hopefully your colleagues, if you are confirmed, prepared to work with China to try to lower carbon emissions?
What role does the EPA
Senator,
have in
on
dealing with
many
China?
different issues, it is important
don't.
not just to be working with nations that we are the
State
strongest
Department.
aligned with, but to also be
I wonder if Paris is going to come up.
And engaged in
And what he's
dialogue with
going to
countries that
recommend
would
on
be
Paris.
competitors and also our
Right.
greatest adversaries. And
Zeldin
right
would say
now,
we'll
China
always have
is-
Paris.
is an adversary in many
Pruitt
respects.
recommended getting out.
As part of the IRA, had a provision in there for, I believe, $7 billion to lower electric bills for working class people all over this country by helping them install solar panels on their roof. We did it, my wife and I did it in our house. Our electric bill went down by 80%. Problem is many working class, lower income people can't afford
In which
the
mansion?
initial cost. to
Yeah,
install
which
the solar
house?
panels. That's what this bill does.
And who
Can I
picked up the
have
cost,
your
Bernie?
word right now? That you will work
Yeah.
with me to make sure
It picked up
that
our,
that
it
solar for
reduced
all
our costs by
program
Surely
80%.
paid for it.
effectively implemented all over the
Exactly.
country.
Senator, it is my obligation on this and every other law enacted by Congress that I will follow my obligations under the law. And when it comes to spending money, it is important that I have the ability to sit before you and account for every dollar that's being spent by the EPA. So I know that this is an important priority of you, and solar power.
Sorry.
That's okay.
I at least think that Sanders is a true
Almost
believer.
saved
I don't.
by the bell, someone said.
Yeah.
I look forward to working with you on the center.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Senator Curtis.
Thank you. And before I begin, just a big thanks to all my colleagues on the committee.
Yeah,
Madam Chair,
Bernie Sanders is like
ranking member,
George
and all
Costanza.
my-
It's not a lie if you believe it. So he
Yeah.
really believes this.
No, I think he really believes it. I think he's
Mrs.
too
Zeldin,
old
I-
to have his mind changed on it at this point.
Does
Not
it
that
seem
he
to-
wouldn't. I mean, it helps too that it supports all the things that he'd like to have happen anyway with regards to socialism and stuff.
Right.
But I do think he actually believes what he's saying.
I don't think communists have a genuine thought other than communism.
I think because of that, Utah.
Does it seem to anyone else besides me? I mean, I'm not unhappy about this, but
to leave it better than we
they're
found
sort
it.
of treating him civilly,
to make
you know, with
sure that
kid
we're not
kid gloves. They're not attacking, and I sort of expected more of that.
And I agree, they did press the climate issue excessively. I do think he kind of parried them off. It could have,
You and I
you know,
had the
from our
best
perspective, we'd like to see the day when people could just flat out call it, you know,
Thank you for your support
bunk
of-
and not have to, you know, play games in that. But I think given the political realities what they are, I think he's not doing too bad.
For all my colleagues
No,
who didn't
I-
see it,
Just trying to.
What's Curtis saying? I mean, he's a climate
Junior
believer too.
Republicans talking about climate and dealing with some of these serious issues. I don't know if you want to comment on that or have any thoughts on that.
Well, Senator, congratulations. I'm looking forward to serving with you in this new capacity, and I enjoyed our work together. I would say that there's a lot that should unite Republicans and Democrats, conservatives and liberals as it relates to the environment. I represented a district where people who are conservative Republicans would be able to unite with people who identify as more liberal Democrats to focus on making our environment better. That type of work together, that common ground, is what the American public are desperate for. They are looking for us to be able to find pragmatic, common sense solutions to be able to represent their interests here in DC.
Yeah, and I'll just double down. My experience is you're the right person to do that. I appreciate your efforts. Now, all of that said, let me talk about some problems in Utah. And some of that has to do with our geology and geography. And you and I, when you were in my office, we talked
But the
specifically
EPA
about
can
the
change that.
80% of the methane
We have
that
control-
is
They have
geology.
bulldozers.
doesn't
Yeah,
come
exactly.
from
Yeah.
Oh, he's asking methane.
traditional fossil fuel sources. It comes from ground sources. It comes from air that comes into the region. And yet they're judged and measured on that whole 100%, not the 20% that they admit. Our geography also surrounds us with mountains. We like to call them real mountains as opposed to the hills that we have on the East Coast. And that traps in.
Oh, he took a shot.
Oh.
Good way to start on a
I've got
committee.
the
Virginia
mountain
is
state.
like, all right.
That traps in
You want to rephrase that?
that traps in all the emissions and they're caught in that area. And so part of our discussion in my office and I'd like to talk about today is asking from your agency an acknowledgement that despite sometimes our best efforts, and I will tell you in Utah, government, education, business leaders, civic leaders have all come together to try to lower these emissions and meet these standards. But because of these, sometimes we can't. I'd love to work with your administration to figure out how we fairly measure that. Could you comment on that?
Yes, Senator. I look forward to being able to work with you and every senator on this committee. I want to make sure that our teams are working together. I sat on the other side of many of these hearings. And one of my greatest frustrations as a member of the House of Representatives was to send a letter, send a follow-up letter, send another letter, and then you're at a hearing following up on your third letter, and the person who's testifying before you is acting as if they haven't received your first, second, or third. That collaboration is very important so that when I'm sitting here before you, that I am able to be accountable to all of you. and that when you need something from the EPA and you're asking a question, that we're able to provide prompt answers. Part of this too is a relationship and understanding every important local priority of each of you in your home states. I want to be able to travel to your states, to be able to see firsthand on the ground whatever are your top priorities. And I know, Senator, you have many top priorities in Utah. I look forward to visiting Utah and being able to see for myself and bringing the team.
Thank you. Would love to have you there, and giving your regional administrator some flexibility. Also, for instance, flexibility in things like technology, being agnostic to the technology and being more focused on the end result, I think would help us get some better results. Finally, in the last few seconds, your predecessor in the House had to deal with me every time that he would come before us talking about his low approval rate on getting chemicals approved. They are 0% of statutory requirement getting these chemicals approved. And I would joke with him, like, you could actually, it's statistically impossible. You could stumble on some approvals, right, accidentally. So I just want to warn you that I'm going to be as tough on you as I was on him, and that this is important. A lot of these chemicals can replace some of these PFAS chemicals. And if we can't get them approved, it just makes the difficulty of getting these off the market near impossible. So look forward to working with you on that, and look forward to seeing you in the mountains of Utah.
You know, meet the new PFAS, same as the old relocated. PFAS. Ridiculous stuff.
My question is, if they're all top priorities, are any of them top? I mean, they're all. It's just this plateau.
You know, so what's missing in this is that our environment is clean and safe. We really don't need an EPA. We have, every state has an environmental protection agency, and most environmental protection is done in the states. EPA needs to be shrunk down to a very small part of what it is. And
put in Kansas, put in the middle of Kansas.
That's not coming across at all.
Put it in a blue state.
Yeah.
Yep. All right, let's hear what you're saying here. Real quick.
Fact, agreed to right here. Mr. Zeldin, you have made an emphasis on the science being the foundation. And one of the concerns that I have is regard to the role of paid influencers. And you have reported that you have been paid to do various op-eds. Would you provide to the committee a list of all of the payments you've received and who is paying you, and a copy of the op-eds you prepared, so that we have a complete understanding of your background in that area?
Yes, Senator, and I also have provided that as part of my financial disclosure, and both ethics at EPA and the Office of Government Ethics has reviewed all of those submissions in providing that clearance letter to the committee.
Yes, we do have your financials. They do not give the details on the text of which op-eds, and sometimes it's obscured. For example, the $50,000 to $100,000 that you were paid for op-eds, but it also says speaking fees, use of media.
I don't get paid that for my op-eds.
So if you could tie the actual payments for the op-eds to the op-eds you wrote, so it's just so we have a clear and transparent understanding of that piece, because we want
that is such BS.
Have our folks serve the public interest and have that foundations of science you're speaking to. But I think the citizens deserve to understand, as we wrestle with this moment, that background, and also the background. You've rented out your media studio multiple times. Was that for doing interviews? Did you do interviews in your media studio, and then you asked to be paid for using your own media studio?
So
is he implying here?
The first point, I have provided a breakdown of every individual op-ed as well as the publication and the date of the publication. Any further, if you need us to print up what was referenced, we're happy to do that. And as far as the media studio, I owned a media studio. So networks could rent, can use that studio for a TV hit.
Thank you. Appreciate that, those details. And we'll take a look at that list. You've also, over the course of your career, received a lot of campaign funding from the oil and gas industry. I think it's estimated at $270,000. Can you assure citizens that the campaign support you received from oil and gas industry will not influence your service to the public of the United States?
Yes, Senator. There's no donation that anyone has ever provided me at any point of any amount that is going to influence any decision that I make in this position or beyond.
Has environmental wacko money ever affected anything Senator Merkley's
And he should have said, or has in the past.
Massive
Yeah, but this is a strategy they've employed. You know, they've done this with Pruitt, for example. This is how they got him out of office. They are very big on trying to get the finances, much like they wanted with Trump's finances, because they probe into this, and it's a backhanded way of removing people that.
Except for themselves. Dark green money is honorable, right?
I just think that they're just trying to humiliate the guy in front of everybody.
Well, and he shouldn't be humiliated. Yep, I ran for office. I took campaign donations, just like you did, sir.
Just like you do.
Yeah, just like you did, sir. Did you taking this money influence your votes? Will it do so in the future?
Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm going to try to do it without profanity. Let's hear
very
more.
Concerned about plastics. We have more and more articles. This article I'll submit for the record. Thank you. For Washington Post has just found out about
this Washington Post. It must be true.
Cancer, and it goes on to
Are they
talk
still in
about
business?
colon cancer, the imbalance of antioxidants, lung cancer. We've had a whole series of articles about
Microplastics are inert.
We have this article, bioaccumulation of microplastics in human brains out
Inert.
of Mexico.
They're going to trigger Steve again
right now. But
Well, that
more
could,
and more, we
the
now have
microplastics in his
breast
brain
milk,
could
plastics everywhere in
explain
the
his.
body, and plastics in our brain. In fact, it turns out
Plastics in our brain.
it turns out to be accurate.
His brain is inert.
Plastics is in our brains. We also have a record of microplastics and nanoplastics affecting human fertility. Plastic is, by its chemical structure, an endocrine disruptor. Are you familiar?
What is he
have
talking
you
about?
steeped yourself
They're
in
inert,
science
dude.
and problems associated with plastics in the human body?
Yes, Senator. And I enjoyed being able to meet with you and your team in your office, where clearly this is an issue of great interest and passion of yours. I would look forward to an opportunity to be able to read what you're referencing specifically, just so that I can become intimately familiar with any
And
detail.
then talk with Steve Malloy about it.
That you're citing that I have not read.
I was hoping that's what you're going to do after a meeting in our office. You're going to go out and say, I
And-
got to
and
read
I-
all
and
these
I have,
articles.
Senator, and I would look forward to continuing to read even further.
I've already read all that
There
crap
is
for you, dude.
chemical industry to
I
say,
do
"No,
think
don't
microplastics
just
are a
everything
problem in the
done."
Northeast. After just looking at Bernie and now Markey, they look like
Yeah. Well, in the Northwest too. I think Markley's from Oregon.
Usable in very limited, basically.
In the end, I don't want the
manufacturing
EPA
waste
director
as
reading
opposed
the
to-
Washington Post to figure out what the science is.
But they're trying to sell it.
Or
as,
the
yeah,
truth. Oh, that's where you get
absolute
your science and truth. Read the
go
Washington
from
Post. I have an
8%
article.
Recycling in America to a high percent.
Yeah. See, if
Are
I
you
had
familiar
prepped
with
Zeldin, I would have said,
the
my response would be, plastic is fantastic. What's your next question?
I'm aware, yes, sir.
I have just one word for you, Senator. Plastics.
Of the inaccuracies that are being publicized about this thermal strategy?
In the 21st century, it's
Senator,
microplastics.
I am researching.
They
and
need to up
reading
their game and start ingesting
all that is being
macroplastics to
provided
make
on
everybody
all sides of this issue.
equal.
Going back to my time in the House, I advocated to clean up our waterways around my district. And as I cited in my opening, the bipartisan work between Senator Whitehouse and Senator Sullivan on Save Our Seas and Save Our Seas 2.0 should be a model to be followed of bipartisanship to go even further.
Yeah. I see I'm over time. I'm sorry, Madam Chair. I'll just close by
Beat
saying.
it. Get lost.
Good comment.
There's
What are
a
you
big
talking
story
about?
trying to be sold about, don't worry. It'll be your responsibility. to make
microplastics.
sure you speak
Much of the
truth
problem
there.
comes from Asia and China.
Thank you, Senator Sullivan.
It's not a problem.
Congratulate you and the ranking member. It's a great committee for our new members. We get a lot of things done here, usually very bipartisan. We have some differences, but that's
Some.
okay. Mr. Zeldin, it was great meeting with you. Congratulations
than
to your
some.
family as well. Thanks for your
I'm actually a
service.
little bit uncomfortable
always
with how
easy, we
cozy
know.
all these guys are on this committee.
You know, Alaska, we love our clean water, clean air. We
Well,
think
don't
it's
worry.
great.
Adam Schiff will ruin that.
We love each other. We love each other. We're going to close the
We don't
session with
always
a
think
singing
the EPA
kumbaya.
has helped in that
Yeah,
regard.
Markey and Schiff will
Great
screw up
action.
that
So,
committee. Don't worry.
I want to begin
Are
by
they in,
checked in
are
on-
they on
I-
this committee?
getting
Yeah.
you,
I checked in on
really
Bergam a couple minutes ago and they were talking about bears. So I don't think we're missing much over there either.
They were
I
talking
think
about
bears are a
bears.
big problem.
Bears. Yeah.
I'm all in favor of bears.
Uh,
We should have more of them.
I got to
Season.
refill my coffee for
prize
Markey.
in this committee, but can I get your commitment to do that?
Yes, Senator. And unlike predecessors of mine who attempted to try to negotiate an August trip. I would want to go
Good.
when it's as cold and dark as possible.
Yeah, well, it's happening right now. We have communities in Alaska that are hitting 30, 40 below zero. And we'd love to have you in the winter and summer. So
Senator Ricketts looks like he wants to come with me, so I
Yeah.
look forward to it.
It'll be
have you.
0 Tuesday for the
Second, I really
inauguration.
appreciate the shout out
Darn
to
climate
me,
change.
White House.
Yeah, where are the
Save Our Seas Act,
protesters?
Save Our Seas 2.0. That was the most comprehensive ocean cleanup.
Are we at
legislation
0
in the history of the
protesters
country.
today?
We
The
are. Maybe
Zero.
they
signed
took
by
our
President
suggestion
Trump.
and threw out
Might wanna
anyone
show up at Center
coming
White
in with the
House sometime
ponchos and
at the signing ceremony that we had
tie
in
dye
Milwaukee.
and
Maybe
flowers
it's
in
too
their
cold.
hair.
Might be too cold for them.
2.0 was, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross and others. It was great. So can you commit to me to work with this committee? I think we already have President Trump's commitment to continue the progress we've made on ocean cleanup, plastics cleanup. It's good bipartisan work. The Trump administration and the president himself is very committed, and so are we. And we're already working on 3.0. We got to focus on the implementation of SOS 2.0, though.
Yes,
Can we
Senator.
get your commitment on that?
Yes.
Great. Well, look, I want to go back to Senator Kramer's issue of, in your opening statement about honoring cooperative federalism. And as you know, our Clean Air Act, our Clean Water Act laws from Congress contemplate a scheme of cooperative federalism that provides an active, in some case, primary role for states on these laws. Will you commit to doing to that? Because it's a really important issue for my state.
Yes, Senator.
So one of the areas where we haven't seen cooperative federalism at all is the way in which the EPA in my state has a history of enforcing the laws. And no offense to my Democratic colleagues, this is always with Democrat administrations. The Obama administration did what they do is they come in with giant, heavy armed agents, body armor, helicopters, like it's
I remember that.
shocking. We had a raid on some placer miners in a place called Chicken, Alaska, under President Obama. Over 30 armed agents, body armors to do what? Do compliance on the Clean Water Act. They didn't find one violation. They scared the hell out of the miners, okay? Then, not to be outdone, the Biden administration has done these raids on small mechanic shops in Alaska. They bring up EPA agents from all over the country, 30 armed agents kicking in doors in mechanic shops in Alaska. By the way, my state believes in the Second Amendment. Most of my state is armed. This is very dangerous because some of these agents could get shot when
For any
they're
of you
coming
guys
in.
that remember,
So what's
the Washington
happened
Times,
is
Ken Smith died a long time
you don't
ago. He
have
used to
nar-
call
you don't
these
have
people
cooperative
jackbooted
federalism. You have
thugs.
a rogue
I remember
EPA
that.
agent
Well, to be fair, I guess they're afraid that these guys might have trained polar bears as watchdogs.
before they talk about compliance.
So we're bringing bears into this one, just like
Onto
Bergen.
these
Exactly.
mechanic
No,
shops.
EPA agents don't need guns. If you need guns,
They
bring in the
violated
police.
Clean Water Act.
Yeah.
I'm encouraged that the senator from Alaska isn't complaining about global warming. I don't think he's mentioned it.
There you go.
All of them are.
There you go.
Still early.
Good point, Craig.
I remember when that stuff was happening and everyone was like, man, this stuff it's heating up with the Obama administration. Remember how weird it was getting with like NOAA buying ammunition and stuff like that? It was so weird.
Oh, right,
Yeah.
right.
I believe in the
Because
Second
climate
Amendment.
scientists need to go around armed.
Bureaucracy. The EPA is a SWAT team. Do you believe the EPA should even have armed agents? When
There
they
you
go into
go.
places, they can just have the
There you
local
go.
police or local
guy's
state
hot.
troopers.
We just
You
said
got
that.
these guys out of control in Alaska, and it is
Watching the
dangerous.
stream. His staff is watching the
And
stream.
you're an EPA administrator. I
Oh,
saw
that little
letters
ear
on
thing
this.
in his ear. He's
For me,
plugged into us.
someone's going to get hurt. Can I get your commitment to
Let's hear this
focus
one.
on compliance, civil compliance, as opposed to kicking in doors with body armor, assault rifles, helicopters? It's crazy. And it's really outrageous. And it happens under Democrats, not President Trump, Democrats.
I want him to be EPA.
Senator, it is outrageous. The story that you told and Senator Murkowski
just
shared
on
with me
all
as well with regards to Chicken, Alaska, it led me as somebody who's going through this transition, to be asking questions as to how did that even get authorized? Who signs off on it? What is the standards that need to be met in order to even say yes to an operation like that?
With 30 agents from EPA agents from all over America came up to raid a mechanic shop, a small business that I think there's
For what?
8
What could he
guys who
possibly
owned
be
it.
doing?
They were National Guard guys, great Alaskans. Can I get your commitment on that?
This isn't
And
the only
work
incident
me in-
like this around
Do
the
you
country.
think the
There's been
EPA should
others.
be armed? I don't.
Senator, if something requires an enforcement action on a prosecutorial front, that is
We'll
working
call
with
the
the
FBI.
Department
We'll
of
call the
Justice.
FBI.
Congress has enacted laws where enforcement is part of the effort. On the compliance front, there are people and entities owning property where there is mitigation that needs to happen and where they want to work with the government to mitigate that situation on their property. We should be working with them to make that happen.
Great.
All right,
Thank
thanks.
you.
Senator
Thank-
Kelly.
Everybody else gets the gun.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Zeldin, congratulations on your nomination, and thanks for coming by my office a couple weeks ago. As we discussed, Arizona has some unique challenges that we need some help from EPA leadership on, and we need to work with you as a collaborative partner to help us address some specific air quality and water quality
Looks like an alien
challenges that
from
we're
this
facing.
angle.
Well, he was in space.
And to do this in a
We don't
way
know
that
what
does
happened
not
while he was up there.
disrupt our state's growth. We're a rapidly growing state.
He
So
should
let's start with air quality.
I had
volunteer for
nightmares of a
Musk
Superman episode.
County.
Yeah.
Aliens that looked like that when I was a kid.
He should volunteer
is
for
the
Musk's journey to
non-attainment
Mars.
Under the Clean Air Act for ground level ozone pollution.
Andy, can you find a
Now, under the
Superman
Clean Air Act,
image from the old
the way the
TV
law
show?
assumes air quality can be improved is by
When
reducing
did Lex Luthor become a
emissions
senator?
from stationary sources of emissions, like big manufacturing. Might make sense in some parts of the country, certainly in more industrialized
Bergam
areas.
is currently talking about all
know,
of the
the,
above energy.
Rust Belt, the East Coast, but it doesn't make sense in Phoenix. And the reason is we're a really young state.
We'll try to grab that
We
clip
don't have a
later for
history
after
of
this
this
hearing is over.
heavy
for sure.
manufacturing. And manufacturing, by the way, is not the source of our air quality challenges in Maricopa County. EPA's own modeling shows that 80% of the ozone forming pollutants in the Phoenix area come from either natural sources like wildfires or sources outside of the region, like California and Mexico. Now, this means that the typical EPA playbook for how to improve air quality and protect public health is not going to work in Phoenix. It's just not. So we need partnership and collaboration with the EPA headquarters and EPA Region 9 to address these challenges. And we've been working closely with state and local officials and our business community on this. And there are specific actions that we're asking for EPA partnership on. So I'd like to ask for your commitment to working with us on these issues. I'm going to go through them. There's like 4 of them. First, we have several new source review permits currently under review by the Region 9 office. If confirmed, will you commit to ensuring that those permits are prioritized for review?
Senator, your priorities will be mine. We'll make sure that we follow the law but making sure that this is top of the list.
Thank you. And second, Maricopa County has submitted 2 local rules, which are called Rule 204 and 205. We spoke about those in my office that would provide alternative pathways for generating offsets
Further.
for new permits for new manufacturing.
There you go.
facilities. So remember what I said, we don't have the heavy
No.
manufacturing that shut
Above.
down that would
There,
generate a
right
permit.
there.
So these rules have some other ways to do that. So both rules are still pending final
Nightmares.
approval. Although I understand that Region 9 and Maricopa County have been meeting weekly on this to resolve some outstanding issues. But Mr. Zeldin, will you commit to ensuring this coordination between EPA and the county can continue with the goal of having both rules approved as soon as possible?
Senator, while I can't prejudge outcome as far as approval goes, on anything. You absolutely have my commitment to be able to work with you, those local partners, to come to Arizona. You also mentioned the Yuma example as well. And as you pointed out, you come from a state where in a place like Maricopa, you don't have a lot of these sites shutting down. You have more coming in, which is a good problem to have in one way, but you definitely need that partnership with EPA.
Yeah, it's challenging in the other way.
Right.
And that's what we've got to figure out. Third, as I noted, we're still trying to understand the long-term reasons our air quality is getting worse and how to resolve that challenge. Will you commit to help Maricopa County develop some better models to understand why our air quality is getting worse in Maricopa County and help us find some solutions to address this long-term?
Yes, Senator.
And fourth, in that same vein, we know
Really,
that
what are they
emissions
talking
from
about?
Mexico are a serious
how's the air
contributor
getting worse
to our
in
air quality
Maricopa County?
challenges throughout Arizona.
I
Will you
think
commit
that
to having the
he's
EPA
talking about smoke from fires in California, and then you know how it's getting worse.
air quality work
Or from factories on the border in Mexico. Okay, it's coming from factories in Mexico. That's how it's getting worse.
Yes,
I don't
Senator.
know.
I also heard this concern from both Senator Schiff and Senator Padilla as it relates to Tijuana and the southern border of California. This is clearly an issue across states.
Plus, it's been really
Look
hot
forward to
there. They've
working with
had
you on this issue.
stagnant air.
And then
So,
finally,
so
will
they-
you also commit to working to find solutions to ensure regions throughout the Western United States aren't penalized for emissions created?
It's all the illegals
by
coming across the
wildfire
border
smoke?
kicking up dirt.
Yes, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Ricketts.
Thank you, Chairman Capito, and congratulations again to Chairman Capito and Ranking Member Whitehouse on your new roles. And you mentioned our new member, Senator Curtis, but we also have a new member, Senator Schiff, with us as well.
We actually have 3 new members on our side, and I've been waiting for them to assemble.
Oh, okay, very good. I didn't want to leave Senator Schiff out because he's sitting there. So, yep, no, not at all. I'm excited to work with the entire team here with regard to the upcoming session here. And Congressman Zeldin, good to see you again. Thank you very much for being here, and again, appreciate your family sacrifices in the past and serving our country, and your continued willingness to sacrifice and serve our country again in this new role. You know, rule of law is what binds Americans' trust.
They act like they're soldiers.
Right?
You're
All too often,
sacrificed.
we've seen under this Biden administration that the rule of law and congressional intent has been subverted by the trying to appease radical left-wing environmentalists, and that undermines people's faith in government
Finally.
and the rule of law and the trust of our institutions. So, thank you for your commitment to implementing the laws as Congress has written and is intended to be able to get back to the fundamentals of the EPA, which is protecting our environment, safeguarding our health, and looking out for the well-being of the public. I'm excited to restore this proper balance of limiting risk with using sound science to protect our environment as the EPA's mission as Congress, which is the EPA's mission as Congress directed it to do. We must follow the law to restore Nebraskans' faith in our government institutions. So one of the areas that you're going to have an opportunity to be able to do that has to do with our renewable fuel standard. And now this is one of the things I've commented in the past. I love this committee because we talk about ethanol and biodiesel and renewable diesel all the time. Chairman Capito will get tired of me doing that. But what we've seen in the past under the Biden administration is that, RVOs are set below production levels and they're chronically late. For example, the RVOs for 2026 are required by law to be published on November 1st, 2024. That did not happen, and it's not likely to happen until probably December 2025. The 2023 and 2024 RVOs will lag behind industry production by 3 to 4 billion gallons. That's what the actual
Renewable
capacity
fuels,
is
another
today.
grift.
Yeah,
Congressman
that's
Zeldin, do you
all.
commit to give producers
Gotta end.
and the industry certainty in the marketplace deserves? And again, this is what businesses want. They want certainty. They want to know what the rules are.
We grow
so they can
corn.
plan
We want to
for it.
sell it as ethanol.
You give them the certainty by following the law as it relates to the timely and appropriate RVO rulemakings.
Yes,
Sir,
Senator.
I will lobby to
Thank you
end
very
that
much.
law.
Another pressing biofuel issue for Nebraskans is year-round E15. I want to thank Senator Fisher and your former colleague, Congressman Smith, for their leadership on the issue. And I'm happy to lend my enthusiastic support to this cause. The solution is over a decade in the making, and we were very, very close in the last Congress to actually getting E15 year round. And I hope we do build on that momentum here in 2025. Congressman Zeldin, although the issue will not be solved entirely by
Doge will touch
EPA,
ethanol.
we rely on your part to create a market of certainty for liquid fuel stakeholders and agricultural producers by doing all you can
Porch
to
ethanol, you
ensure that
say?
Americans will have access to E15 all year round.
Senator, while I can't prejudge outcome of processes to follow across the board, I know how important this issue is to you, and I know how important this is to President Trump. The president has expressed this time and again with regards to you. You've heard it from Senator Ernst. I've heard it from Senator Grassley, Senator Thune, Senator Fisher, and others, Senator Hawley. So I understand how much of a priority this is for you. As far as establishing certainty, hopefully this is something that Congress is able to resolve to the extent that you're relying on the EPA to establish that certainty. I look forward to being able to do my part, and I want to continue to work with you to achieve the outcomes that we had discussed.
Great, thanks.
And
Most people I know go out of their way to try and find non-ethanol gas.
well.
So I don't think
But
Nebraskans are
really
begging for this stuff.
Yeah.
Get away
Well, we ought not be burning food for.
And it doesn't work well with most vehicles. It's not necessary today, and I don't know why we continue to push that.
Nebraskans aren't begging for ethanol itself. They're begging to sell their corn for ethanol.
Yeah, they want the subsidies.
They're grifting. All the senators he named that are talking about ethanol are from states where they're making money off the federal government's ethanol mandate.
Huge money.
I appreciate the fact that you
As an unrelated aside, I still do recommend people follow Grassley on Twitter, if only just so that you can watch the few times a month when he goes on a rant against the History Channel for having nothing but Sasquatch and ghost shows on it right now. It's very funny.
Now, Grassley and I could sit here and do a watch party on that because it's not history if they're talking about Sasquatch. I'm sorry. If it's the Discovery Channel, it ain't history if they're following hillbillies, chasing lights and sounds.
With a gasoline engine. So that's the kind of innovation that can help us reduce our impact on the environment if we're allowed as Americans to actually innovate, and rather than have this big top-down government one size fit all, like we're going to push this solution on you, whether it works or not. So
isn't that what ethanol is?
I thought you mean like renewable fuels?
Thank you. Senator Markey.
Yep. Thank you.
All right, here we go.
Congressman Zeldin, in 2016, in a congressional debate, you said, quote, "There are many different ways that we can be better stewards of our environment. The key is to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels, to become more environmentally friendly, and to pursue clean and green energy."
Did you say that?
Do you still believe, Mr. Zeldin, that it's our job to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels?
We quoted him on that. in
Ideally,
a report.
Senator, to the extent that, first off, I support all of the above energy.
No, I didn't ask you that. I said, do you believe it's imperative that we, using your words, reduce our
Steve,
reliance
you can
on
have your
fossil
drink
fuels?
now.
Do you
He
still
said it.
believe that?
In considering all factors, in an ideal world, we would be able to pursue always the cleanest, greenest energy sources possible.
Like unicorns.
You agree with Lee Zeldin in 2016.
There's nothing
So that
clean
means that we're in a
and
completely
green
different
about
context than we are,
wind and
nomination
solar. It's
hearing.
out of sight, out of mind.
Do you,
Well,
you see the fires in LA
To one
right
degree,
now?
it is because when your cars stop running because
storms
you're running on
ripple
electric
through
power and all you have is wind and solar, then you're
Let's
not
listen to
putting
Mark.
out any emissions. That's for sure.
But you're also not having any standard of living. I mean,
Oh well, they
most
didn't
people
say
are
clean.
spending- They need a. Let's remember the automobile is the thing that created the vehicle that created the suburbs. It's the vehicle that created the hospitality industry. 70%. Well, no, it's not. It's 85% of all small businesses that have drive-through windows are dependent on the automobile.
Yeah, but see, you missed the point, Donna. Is that he didn't say clean, green, and prosperous. He just said clean, green, and presumably dead.
As quote, the Supreme Court said in their decision, may reasonably be anticipated to endanger public health or welfare.
Well, we
Do you
need to do a
accept
cost
that
benefit
as a
analysis. Do
mandate?
we destroy our economy
Authorized.
Okay,
Yes,
You do.
authorized.
for
to.
green
Yeah,
energy?
so you got
And
that
then
right.
in which case we don't need it.
Um,
We won't need energy if
You
we've
don't
already destroyed our
actually want to
economy.
accept the requirement.
He's right about this, though.
You have to
Authorized
with the
doesn't mean you
endangerment
have to do it.
that
Right, right.
Fossil fuels actually poses
This is
to
endangerment, I think.
LA or North Carolina or Florida or the Gulf Coast almost on a yearly basis. You don't accept that. as a
Senator, I just want to
different
be accurate. And in citing Massachusetts versus EPA, the decision does not require the EPA. It
It says
authorizes the
you're
EPA.
obligated.
gets an
You're
A for that.
obligated to regulate.
Yeah, no.
If
that's
you
right.
find there's an endangerment, you're obligated. Do you feel it's
If.
an obligation?
If you find it in
But
danger.
but it doesn't say that you are obligated to, and that's it.
There you go.
There are steps that the EPA would have to take in order for an obligation to be created. I'm just going off the actual text
Right.
of the
Well,
Supreme
again,
Court legislation.
do you think we're in danger in LA? Do you think the people in North Carolina and the Gulf Coast were in danger?
Not from climate change.
Are they in danger? Absolutely. For people who are having their
All right.
homes burned down.
Then you have an obligation to deal with that. and to do something.
No, one thing's got nothing
I'm
to
not
do
hearing
with
your job at the.
It is not from
your job
climate change, so
Yeah.
he has no obligation.
Right.
doing something
It's
about
from
it, you know?
mismanagement.
We're watching firefighters run towards the flames in Los
Senator-
Angeles, and the EPA is responsible to keep the fiery embers of climate change under control.
This is pretty
Powerful
weak from Markey.
Cars, industry.
Wait,
Are
Well,
you
Markey's
going
pretty
to
weak.
fight those dangers, Mr. Zeldin? Are you going, as you said in 2016, or are you going to fan the flames of destruction
Senator,
on the demand of the fossil fuel industry, which you now refuse
Epic.
to actually hold responsible for the rapidly warming country that we're living in?
Senator, there's a few things there. First off, as far as the Supreme Court case goes, it was not a decision of the Supreme Court that if there was a fire in 2025 in California, that if that fire creates a danger to people who are having their homes burned down, that the EPA is then that triggers the EPA to regulate carbon dioxide. There's just more to that. I'm just trying to be
Yeah,
accurate.
it's pretty simple.
Good.
No,
It says the EPA is supposed to be the environmental watchdog and not a fossil fuel lapdog. That's what it says.
But
And
it doesn't actually
EPA
say that.
is the
Senator.
Nice
most
turn of
that have
phrase.
Families be able to sleep at night knowing their air is clean and the water is safe and their future is protected. And it just should not leave people up at night wondering if they are going to have danger that comes into their into
Does
their
this guy
family
actually
system
think that
because of
wildfires
pollution.
won't happen
That's
if we
the
just
job.
raise taxes on carbon
Between
dioxide?
2016 and today, something has
he
happened
actually does
that
think
you're
that.
not willing
Yeah, I
to
think
come
so
right out
too.
and say the fossil fuels.
But why aren't
North
we?
Carolina wouldn't flood if it weren't for
that
if we only had
has
carbon
been
taxes.
ultimately created by human beings that the EPA's job has as a responsibility to reduce. And you refuse to actually take that central responsibility. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Senator Bozeman.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, congratulations to you and Senator Whitehouse. You all are going to be a great team as usual and a great example, I think, for the rest of Congress.
Look forward to working with you.
We appreciate you being here, appreciate your willingness to serve. We had a great meeting. And I want to compliment you on the fact that you have made yourself available. I know you've worked on that really hard. Senator Curtis, in response to a question of his, you talked about the frustration of, writing letters and, you're at a hearing and nobody's responded and making calls. You've got maybe a situation like Dan talked about or whatever senator on both sides of the aisle, and you just can't get through to anybody to really, Can you talk about, as a former member, how important that is to you to make sure that you're going to continue to be available, answer the phone, and be such that we can get the information that we need to go forward?
Senator, I want every member of this committee to have the ability to contact me, to be able to share directly your concerns and your ideas. I want to be responsive to all of the members of this committee. I want my team to be able to work closely with your offices. I want to know what all of your priorities are at any given time. And I want to make sure that I am accountable and transparent to this committee. I spent 8 years in the House of Representatives. I've had an opportunity to see people come before committees and they were very responsive, and I've seen the opposite. And it is important
More often than not.
you know, especially with your great chair. And she has a great team to make sure that the EPW committee on both sides of the aisle with Senator Whitehouse and Senator Whitehouse's team, I want to make sure that there is a very strong relationship between this committee and the EPA.
Very good. I have the privilege of serving my colleagues as chairman of the Ag Committee, which is the direct oversight of EPA's Office of Pesticide Programs. I understand you and Agriculture Secretary nominee Brooke Rollins have a good working relationship. As issues affecting agriculture arise, I found farmers and ranchers are best served when the EPA and the Department of Agriculture are working together. Can you tell us about how you envision EPA and USDA working together to create a predictable, science-based, and efficient regulatory system to ensure the timely availability of products and tools farmers and ranchers depend on to produce the safest, most abundant, and most affordable food supply in the world?
I agree with everything that you just said, Senator. That must be our goal. That should be the relationship between all agencies, including the interaction between the EPA and the USDA, in a way that you are able to go back to all of your constituents and to be able to talk about that progress that has been achieved as a result of these agencies working together.
Very good. For the last several years, the EPA failed to collaborate with industries and states prior to rulemaking. I think that's true of whatever administration has been in power. Early in the Biden administration, it became evident the EPA's agenda was shaped by the input from narrow group of stakeholders. Given that every rulemaking has a significant impact on businesses, workers, and domestic manufacturing, which cannot simply be restored overnight, how will you work with industries more collectively to ensure that their concerns are addressed while maintaining a balanced approach to environmental protection?
Senator, first off, it is important that the EPA is always fulfilling our obligations under the law, that we are abiding by the rule of law, that we are following our commitment to Congress to be able to follow the Administrative Procedures Act and to ensure that all actions are durable well into the future. As far as engagement throughout that process, it is important to hear from people who have good, substantive, informed feedback that allows the EPA to be able to do a better job, to make better decisions. And that at times might involve me speaking to people who I might agree with or disagree with on any given day. But the worst thing that I could possibly do, that the EPA could do, is to turn a blind eye to great substantive feedback that will better inform our decisions so that we are being responsive and transparent, not just to Congress, but also to the American people.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Do we know when the official confirmation date
Madam
is?
Chair, I feel I should address the mountains versus hills controversy. As a senator from a state in the West, I'm inclined to agree with Senator Curtis.
Committee will have to meet again,
That
mark
as I
up,
understand where the
and
chair is
vote,
from,
and the Senate
and
has to
you
vote,
are the
so
chair.
Yeah.
I'm inclined to
whenever
agree
the
with
Senate gets
chair.
around to doing all that.
So let
They
me
got
just
to do
say
it for all
unequivocally,
these
I've got friends
nominees.
on both sides of this issue, and I stand with my friends.
It won't be
Mr. Zeldin,
until after the inauguration.
as you're well aware,
The Biden
fires
EPA
in
administrator
Nebraska,
didn't get
California over the last
confirmed until March.
week have
Oh.
displaced thousands of people.
Yeah, but when did his
resulting
hearings
in the
start?
loss
Did they
of
start as early as
I,
this?
I don't recall.
As these fires continue
Let's
to
definitely listen to
destroy Californians' homes, livelihoods, and so much more, it's more important than ever that California has the full support of the federal government to recover and respond. Fueled by severe drought conditions and strong Santa Ana winds.
I just heard a
unimaginable-
protester. It sounds like
unimaginable
a
events
shout of
like
some
these
kind.
fires
I did
devastate
too.
communities and worsen Californians' water
Probably an
scarcity.
interior.
When you were a state senator in New York, you were a member of the state Senate Bipartisan Task Force on Hurricane Sandy recovery. You applauded a comprehensive legislative package that included tax assessment relief for properties catastrophically damaged by the storm, revisions to regulatory obstacles that slow down the rebuilding process, and improvement and continued expansion of state insurance laws to help policymakers receive funds following a disaster and more. And in response to Hurricane Sandy, the EPA supported FEMA and worked closely with federal agencies and the states of New Jersey and New York to assess damage and respond to environmental concerns. The EPA stepped in to assess the condition of drinking water and wastewater facilities, helped to get several damaged wastewater treatment plants in New Jersey up and running, evaluated conditions at hazardous waste sites, and assisted in the collection of debris and household hazardous waste. Can you provide Californians with the assurance that you will advocate the same strong recovery and response assistance from EPA as EPA provided to your then constituency in Long Island after Hurricane Sandy, if confirmed?
Senator, first off, congratulations on your election. I look forward to working with you on this committee. And we all from the rest of the country have been watching what is playing out for your constituents. And many of us know people who have been impacted and they've lost everything. It's hard to it's impossible for us to put ourselves in the shoes of your constituents right now. I, if confirmed, would want to not only know everything in my power to be able to do as EPA administrator to assist you in fighting for your constituents who have been devastated by these wildfires, but I would want to, in fact, do everything in my power to be able to assist, to make sure that this recovery is as speedy as possible. I would like to come to California to speak to those on the ground, hear any concerns that we need to take back with us to Washington, and to assist both you and Senator Padilla and your House colleagues to be able to fight for these constituents who have lost everything.
Thank you, Mr. Zeldin. We will welcome you to the state and look forward to your visit. After the Maui fires in August 2023, EPA crews removed more than 200 tons of hazardous materials from 1,400 plus properties in the fire impacted areas. The EPA also deployed water emergency team members to provide on-the-ground guidance and technical assistance for stormwater, wastewater, and drinking water for the county of Maui. Do you commit also to prioritizing similar assistance for California to ensure that local water supplies are tested, treated, and restored to safe drinking water standards, just as EPA stepped in to do after the horrific Maui fires?
Senator, I would want to do everything in my power, if confirmed as EPA administrator, to be able to assist with that as well.
And I assume, Mr. Zeldin, your
Cal
response
EPA
will
could do
not
all
depend
that.
on whether disaster strikes a red state or a blue state. You will equally work to speed relief to those Americans affected.
That's an
Yes,
interesting
Senator, it does not
question,
matter
Mr.
what kind of
Schiff.
a state you're from. All 50 states are going to be of the highest importance, regardless of where a disaster ever strikes anywhere in America.
Thank
The
you.
quickest way to relieve the people in
Let me
California is
touch
to
on one
remove
other
the
major
state
issue that we
regulations that
discussed
have
yesterday. That's
caused the
That's
problem in the
right.
first place.
crisis.
Well, they're not going to
Not
do that because
This crisis has
The
you
brought
know,
building
immense
regulations aren't the
industrial
federal.
waste and raw sewage over the border from Mexico into California.
Well, the
posing
Greens
serious
are already
environmental and
looking to
public
turn
health
those
challenges
Malibu
in
beach
San Diego
properties
and
into
Sonoma
public
County.
beach.
Yeah.
We've had beaches shut down. We've had SEAL training facilities deeply impacted. Coast Guard and Customs and Border personnel have routinely reported suffering from infections and gastrointestinal illnesses. Thanks to the work of Senator Padilla and Representative Scott Peters and others, we were able to secure $250 million in disaster supplemental relief in December. But EPA can play a pivotal role in this crisis as well. I would ask you to support EPA's Border Water Infrastructure Program, but also will you agree to review EPA's January 7th decision to deny requests to investigate the Tijuana River Valley for a potential Superfund designation? not asking you to prejudge it, but will you agree to review it and consider whether a different judgment should be reached?
Yes, Senator.
I thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Senator Lummis.
Thank you,
We really
Madam
need to
Chairman.
investigate
Congratulations to you and to our
funds.
Look forward to working with you both. Mr. Zeldin, it's great to see you. Thank you for accepting this nomination and appearing before this committee. I enjoyed serving with you in the U.S. House and look forward to serving with you in your new role at EPA. I also want to extend my warmest welcome to your family. I want to start with a very, very fundamental question and give you an example. The question is it your job as EPA administrator to follow the science or follow the law? Here's the question associated with that question. Clean Power Plan 2.0 has rules associated with it that run afoul of the Supreme Court's ruling in West Virginia versus EPA. So as administrator, will you follow the law, both in statute and as interpreted by the Supreme Court?
Senator, on every situation, if confirmed as EPA administrator, my first obligation will always be to follow my obligations under the law.
With regard to goals and clean air, is the goal to have clean air, or is the goal to eliminate specific fuels?
The goal, the reason why a regulation might be in place is the end state of wanting to have the cleanest, safest, healthiest air, drinking water. That is the goal, the end state of all the conversations that we might have, any regulations that might get passed, any laws that might get passed by Congress. What brings us all together should be the ultimate goal of having clean air and clean water.
That is my goal as well, and I look forward to working with you to accomplish that goal. I spent 4 days in October in Silicon Valley, mostly meeting with firms that are developing artificial intelligence. If the U.S. is to be the leader in developing AI, we need abundant energy, and it has to be baseload energy. The demands of artificial intelligence for energy are going to be extraordinary. And so our goal, as you and I agree, is to provide that additional abundant energy so the United States can remain the leader in the world on the development of artificial intelligence, provide that additional energy in the cleanest way possible. And in some instances, that may involve finding the absolute cleanest way to continue to use fossil fuels. I want to point out to you, if you look at how clean natural gas is in the United States compared to other countries and compared to other sources of energy, you'll be stunned at how clean it is. Yet, sometimes this panel and others tend to lump all fossil fuels together and assume that they cannot be provided as part of the energy baseload in this country in a clean way. I'd like to invite you to Wyoming so we can show you that there are ways that fossil fuel can be used and that carbon capture and sequestration can be used to help include all types of fuels in developing the energy this country needs in order to be artificial intelligence leader of the world. Now, I have another question with regard to small refineries.
Yeah, we can't be AI leader unless we have carbon
Indulging
capture.
that editorial comment.
Wyoming
are
is
you
starved for
aware
carbon
that
capture.
there
They
are
really
more
think
than
it's going to save them, but it's not.
Where's Greg Wrightstone?
Can we please acknowledge that the science that they keep alluding to is junk? I mean, it's
Okay.
fake science to start with, and it's just the basis for the green grift. You know, the EPA, our industries are the most regulated. The EPA has already overstepped its boundaries in a lot of these instances. And now they want them to do more to just squeeze out
Yeah,
industry.
this is just about stealing money from taxpayers in the Inflation Reduction Act. And all that stuff should be rolled back. There's a big Washington Post article today about how Doug Burgum wants to take CO2 capture nationwide.
And that won't make AI work better. It won't make the energy systems work better. In fact, it will make them worse. They've tried carbon capture. They've hooked them up to power plants. The power plants fail because the technology breaks.
If Trump wants to cut trillions from the budget, he's got to get rid of all this climate crap.
Can impose
All the IRA money, all got to go away.
Yeah, I want them to roll back the ARI, the Inflation
IRA.
Reduction Act. Yes, the IRA. I want them to claw back the environmental justice money, and I want them to do an investigation because it's the biggest fraud scam in history.
Absolutely, that's it right there.
Literally could bankrupt small local governments across the nation. My concern is that, of course, we address PFAS.
I hear some exciting things are going on in Interior now.
That submits
We have more
all
PFAS
local
nonsense.
municipal water systems and airports to litigation.
Senator, thank you for raising this issue, and I've heard it from your colleagues on this committee on both sides of the aisle during my meetings. It's something that is a big issue to you, and it will therefore be a big issue for me. And I also saw it in my home county of Suffolk County, where we had PFAS issues. The passive receiver issue is something where it could get passed down to the consumer, where they end up paying for the cleanup costs in a way that we need to be cognizant of at the EPA.
Who was harmed in
Thank you,
your
Mr.
community from
Zeldin. Thank you,
PFAS?
Madam Chairman. I'm sorry, I ran over.
No,
That's also a huge
I
scare.
am pleased to welcome
Junk
one of
science.
our newer
Well, I mean,
members,
he says he had
uh,
issues. Well,
Senator
tell me,
Brooks, and I
show me
would
the harm.
welcome you and remind you that you have very large shoes to fill with Senator Cardin leaving from the great state of Maryland, and I'm sure you'll be able to do that. So welcome, and it's great to have you on committee.
Thank you so much. First of all, I'd like to just say thank you so much to Chairwoman Capito and Ranking Member Whitehouse,
The
for
corrupt
your
Prince
leadership
George's
on this
County
committee,
executive.
and for holding
New senator.
today's hearing. I agree with you that we miss Senator Ben Cardin, but I am excited to be able to join this committee. EPW has jurisdiction over many issues that are important to Marylanders, and I look forward to working with both of you as well as all of our colleagues on this committee to address the environmental and infrastructure challenges that we face in our states. To Mr. Zeldin, congratulations again to you and to your family on your nomination.
Yeah, Murkowski is currently asking Burgum about polar bears and take limits and stuff, and I thought that might be an interesting thing to hear.
That the
Better than
business
Angela
of what is
also,
going on in the
Brooks.
North Slope is put on pause, put on hold. So I need your commitment that
This is the
you'll
second
work
time,
with
by the way, that
Alaskans,
they're talking about bears in
particularly
this
you need
hearing.
people up there, the North Slope borough up there on basically all things polar bear.
Well, be happy to do that. And as you know, better than anyone, Senator, I think close to half of the land and subsurface and offshore that Interior controls is in Alaska. So you can't, Interior you may view as a landlord, but I would view Alaska as one of the biggest assets this country has and one of the biggest responsibilities of Interior, and look forward to working with you.
It's exactly what I was hoping you would say, recognizing really the significance there. And I don't want the Department of Interior to be a landlord. I want you to be a partner. I want you to be a partner with us as we determine how we achieve the balance that we talk about in this committee, because we are just as proud of our outdoor activities. You have had an opportunity firsthand. I love your story about the time that you spent in Alaska. We, of course, welcome you back anytime, all the time. But we've been able to access our resources, whether it's timber or whether it's oil, and still provide for a place that most would say, this is where I want to go before I die type of location. So I think we're doing something right there. I need to alert you as well as my colleagues. When we talk about the abundance, we have it in Alaska. But when you can't access it, we're now in a situation in my state where in the south central portion, where we're pretty much 75, 80% of the people actually are living in this region, where the energy, the natural gas that we have been relying on out of Cook Inlet is dwindling in its supply. We are talking as we speak about building an import terminal to import liquefied natural gas from Canada to keep the lights on and to keep homes warm in Alaska, where
Is this
we
the
have
Jones Act issue? Is that why they're doing Canada?
unquantifiable reserves of natural gas. We just need to figure out how we're going to be able to commercialize this. So we need the help to unleash the opportunities that
Soon the
we have
Trans-Alaskan
to not
pipeline
only
won't work.
allow
We can't get
Alaska
enough oil to it.
to
How much of
have
Alaska
that
is owned by the
energy
feds?
independence that we
Most of
so
it.
rightfully
But
should
About
have.
80,
But
about 80%,
also
about
to be
80%.
able
In these
I have
states,
family that live in
help
Alaska.
not
There
only our
is
country, but our
there
friends
is
in Alaska.
frustration by normal
We have
people who
plenty of
live in
time to talk
Alaska
about
at
it,
how the
but
federal
time has
government is
expired.
stopping
Hopefully
them
we're going to have
from not just
another round, 'cause I
creating
don't
enough
want to
energy
submit
to support
questions
the
for
whole
the
world, but
record
even
for
for
you. I
themselves.
want the
They should be paying
opportunity
nothing
to
for
put it out on
electricity
the
in
record
Alaska.
now. So
They should be paying
good to be
nothing for
working
natural
with you.
gas in their
We don't
houses in
have to
Alaska. They have
answer
so
any
much.
of that, but I
It's
just
these
want to
ridiculous.
states
invest
sue
in
for their
our
land back.
Murkowski shouldn't be asking for a partnership. She should be asking the federal government to dispose of its holdings in Alaska and let the state and the people therein manage their resources as they do in California. I mean, in New York and all the eastern states where the federal government has almost no holdings.
Do the jobs that we
All
do
right,
without the support and
Let's
love
go
of
back
our
to Zeldin.
spouses. My time is limited and not sure if we have a second
No,
round.
let's
There's a
hear
number of
Linnea.
issues
Let's listen
that
to
I'm going to
These are
try
both
to
committees,
get
by the way.
to. If I don't, I'll be submitting questions for the records. Issues like tribal sovereignty that's come up before and your thoughts on our trust and treaty obligations as a country. Public lands, we've had some recent progress and exciting announcements in California that we'd like to continue to build on and not go backwards on. Try to get to some water system, but let me begin with some of the more urgent questions and issues in California, Los Angeles specifically. We've all seen the devastation of recent fires in Southern California. As we speak here today, more than 40,000 acres burned, 12,000 structures plus destroyed, more than 24 people who have perished. That number is probably going to grow. It's clear it's been one of the most destructive natural disasters in Los Angeles history. As governor, you had an experience, not at this scale, but in 2024, you requested a major disaster declaration to assist in the recovery from the historic wildfires that ravaged across northwest North Dakota. And President Biden, as I understand, approved it quickly and without conditions. Is that correct?
Yes.
So do you believe federal disaster aid should come with or without conditions?
Well, I think it's each situation would vary. But first of all, let me just say that I want to extend on behalf of Catherine and I, our empathy and sympathy to anybody that's lost their home, lost their lives, lost a loved one. We've got friends that have lived in the area that have lost their homes, homes they raised their kids in for 30 years, every piece of memorabilia and memory that they had gone, only getting out with a shirt on their back and talking to those individuals directly. And as it happens, our daughter was in LA for an event. The event was canceled. Catherine had flown out there, so both of them also had to evacuate as the fires were encroaching in that part of the city. So our family
part of our family saw it firsthand. And again, it's just urban wildfire is something that we, as a country, we need to think. And I say each situation is different because where you talked about it, North Dakota was largely rural, largely grasslands.
And I'll
Very,
get to that
very
because you've
different.
experienced both, but please extend my offer to support, assist in any way, any of my constituents that are friends or relatives of your family. For the record, there's never been strings attached to disaster relief. And I certainly hope this is not the first case. So I would ask, as this plays out in Congress over the next several months, if you're fortunate enough to be confirmed as Interior Secretary, you wouldn't be the one deciding on whether or not to grant disaster declarations, but the department is significant, particularly when it comes to wildfire response. Would you commit to responding to every disaster with as much support and resources possible, regardless of which state or jurisdiction the disaster is in?
Well, absolutely. But I would say I would go a step further, which is we've got to commit to, and maybe it's going to take, apparently the fire in Maui wasn't big enough in a sense. I mean, that was horrible, 100+ lives lost, the devastation that's there, but it didn't create a response nationally or at the federal level or a collaboration of states. But with this incredible, the largest ever, and when the dollars come up, this could be the most expensive urban wildfire in the history of the country. It's probably a time for all of us together to say, what could we be doing differently? And I'm excited that Tim Sheehy is a new senator. He's the first that I know of who's actually worked as a professional firefighter on wildfire. I know that he and others are willing to work across the aisle to come up with solutions.
And Senator Sheehan and I are already working on some proposals on a bipartisan basis to improve the federal government's ability to help in situations like these.
And if I could, Senator, I would say we also have to look. It goes back to actually the grid, because if you a wildfire, whether it's in North Dakota, California, you need three things: you need oxygen, you need fuel load, and you need a spark. And in both cases, in North Dakota and in whatever, when you have high winds, those sparks can come from above ground power lines coming in contact with vegetation. And so we have to think about the grid.
I love that you have that appreciation and knowledge, and unfortunately the experience, because red flag conditions is something new to people across the country, but nothing new for those of us in the very dry West. My time is running quickly. I want to get at least one other issue in on the record. Last session, I began another bipartisan effort with Senator Daines to permanently protect the pay increases for
fuel
federal
load first
firefighters
and
that
state
Congress had
regulations.
previously
It's not the federal government that
approved.
caused these
Side
wildfires. It's
note,
not
there's
climate
currently
change.
about 1,000 brave federal
California
firefighters
could have
that are already
100% prepared for this fire. They
tremendous
didn't,
response, not
it's
just
not like they
locally, not
didn't
just
know
state
the
firefighters,
conditions
mutual aid,
existed
but
for
a
it to
number of
happen.
jurisdictions there,
They could have
including,
limited
federal
the
firefighters.
spread of it.
If confirmed, are you
They
committed to
continue to not
wildland
prepare
firefighters?
and then
Because
blame
the
climate
protection
change as an excuse for
challenges,
mismanagement. You can't say it
a
enough.
number of reasons.
It's not just not prepared. It's they continue to pass laws that make the situation more likely to be disastrous when it occurs.
But it's an essential job.
It's true.
And then they chase out the insurance industry.
And then they want taxpayers to bail them out with no strings attached.
These raging wildfires that were tearing across the prairie. I had a chance immediately after that to meet with local volunteers and local firefighter units and our small state fire team, our National Guard that was out, and including just a lot of citizens that jumped in as they did in California to try to save their own homes. I think we all have got a greater appreciation for that role. I think we need to have
California prevented
a
a lot of
more
fire
sophisticated
departments
response than
from
we
even
have right
coming
now,
to help
because
them
again, this is
because of the
a thing we need to recognize, that there's rural firefighting and then there's urban. And I think the LA example shows us that there's things that we have to do differently going forward.
Thank you. And just in closing, a number of issues that will follow up with questions for the record, unless we do get a second round, but a note, not a question, and a nod to Senator Hickenlooper, who allowed me to jump the line here. We're going to need your engagement on Colorado River, some important negotiations that need to stay consensus driven in the years ahead, and a recognition, again, tapping your experience as governor, that we need federal and state agencies working collaboratively to tackle resource issues, especially water. In California, we have both the Central Valley Project, which is a federal system, the State Water Project, which is a state system that are truly interconnected. And so I introduce that to you and look forward to working with you on the water management challenges that we'll have to address together going forward, particularly given the federal biological opinions that have been carefully crafted and need to be maintained. Thank you for your time.
Senator Cassidy.
Hey, Governor Burgum, thanks for doing the job, man. We appreciate it.
Back to Zeldin.
We both come from oil and gas producing states. One of my top priorities has been to use
for a wastewater disposal system. As DeSoto County has now exploded in population and is now 200,000 people, the people of the city of Memphis decided that we were taking too much capacity and that DeSoto County should go it on its own, and went to a federal court, and perhaps a Tennessee judge saw it the way that Memphis was looking at it anyway, ruled that DeSoto County's got to get their own wastewater system and do it in a hurry. Happy to do this, but the federal government having told us that we have to do it, we're going to need some help. And so I hope that you can commit to using all your authority at your disposal through subsidy loans and other mechanisms to help us fund this very expensive thing that's being required of us. I believe the EPA should engage with regional offices to ensure that they're taking proactive role in addressing critical needs. So will you commit in your new role to working with us and with the city of Memphis to resolve this problem?
Yes, Senator.
I very much
Wow,
appreciate
okay.
that.
A lot of these senators sure are
Let's move
really
down to
interested in
Jackson,
exactly what's
Mississippi,
going on in their own
where
cities
we've
and
had
towns,
a
and
flood
want to make sure EPA is going to be there for
problem
them.
for
But,
some
I know wastewater sounds boring, but there are
a
a couple real environmental issues. One is
measure
stormwater management,
authorized in
another is
the
wastewater
Word Act of
management. And instead of
1986.
solving those
I don't
important
know what you
problems,
were
which
doing
lead to
in
dirty
1986,
water and
Mr.
rivers,
Zeldin, but it was a
what do
long
we
time
do? We're
ago.
doing this climate nonsense. So
This initiative
Yes.
has
Well, I just want to tell
know
you
it's
guys.
not sexy. Oil and gas is more important, but I mean, this is
Right.
for environmental issues, Republicans should focus on this kind of stuff and not the other crap.
Yeah, that's core mission stuff right there, not the other stuff. And I just, Linnea, before you jump in here, I just want to say to the audience and to you guys that we're trying to monitor. We had hoped to be able to play both of these streams at the same time, one of them on captions, so we can kind of monitor it that way and switch back and forth. We're not able to put both streams up there, but we are monitoring both. And so you've noticed we're going to try to flip back and forth when something interesting happens. We also have a team of people grabbing clips from things we may have missed from one hearing or the other. And at the end of the live stream part of this thing, we'll probably play a couple of those and comment on them again. So stick around for the entire thing.
Yeah, and hello, Chris Martz. You are currently in New Orleans. Does that mean that you are currently underwater, drowning? I have been told by Senator Whitehouse that
I'm not in
you are in imminent danger.
Hello, Mark Morano.
Yes, Senator.
In one sense, the senators are doing what senators were supposed to do originally, which was they were supposed to be representative of their states, not statesmen doing the whole country, back when they were appointed. So in one sense, when he's talking about local issues, that's really what they were supposed to be there for.
Now, let me just mention something. And I don't know that
Mark Morano's here. I don't know if he knows he's on the stream, so don't swear. There you are. We heard you a second ago. We don't hear you now, but we'll work that out. You're muted.
There is a good neighbor rule that's come out of the Biden administration.
So we can go back to
it
interior?
has somehow concluded that my state of Mississippi, under a population of under 3 million, is somehow to be penalized for downwind.
This is a really important rule
from
EPA
Mississippi
rule.
to Dallas, Fort Worth, and Houston. Now, those of us who've seen weather maps, we know kind of the way weather travels. It doesn't travel from east of the Mississippi back to Houston and Dallas, but somehow they have determined that our largely rural state of Mississippi should be penalized for ozone pollution in Dallas and Houston. The Supreme Court's
Yeah,
looking
this is
at
another
it.
hoax. This notion that
I don't
air
think
pollution
you can
travels
comment on
from
that.
the
I hope
west
we
to
can
the east, and
dispense
it's
with
the
the
reason
release
that
entirely, but I
states
just
in the
want you to
east
be
can't meet
aware
their air
of
quality,
what
can't comply with
the
air quality
federal government
standards. It's
has
total
been with
nonsense.
regard to
Well,
the
here
state.
he's saying it's traveling from Mississippi down to
Yeah,
Texas. Yeah.
right.
No, he's saying that the EPA has previously penalized Mississippi for air pollution in
Yeah.
Dallas.
I think you need your microphone, sir.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It's because of the
Madam
notion of
Chair,
ozone
I
transport,
to, first
which
of all,
is
congratulations
ridiculous.
on the nomination. Congratulations your family that's here to support you and acknowledge what I understand is a very positive exchange you had with my colleague from California, Senator Schiff, in regards to the current wildfires and EPA's role.
If I could just give a
response.
Didn't this
and,
guy just
our
ask
ongoing
Bergam
need,
questions?
to maintain that.
Yeah, they're going back and forth.
To
Yeah,
visit
he's on both.
So now he's going to blame the wildfires on climate change. So let's
Well,
take a
you know
listen.
how he said cordial exchange. I worked, I worked for the Senate Environment Public Works Committee. The reason the tone difference from yesterday and today, and I think Steve alluded to this about an hour ago, I've been listening in. I haven't been watching, but I've been audio listening. Is this is a former colleague, Zeldin, and they have unbelievable respect for their former colleagues, generally, unless that colleague has gone off the reservation, which clearly Zeldin has not. He's doing all the rhetorical things. So they're being very gentle with him. That's my first comment. And in terms of like Winehouse and Bernie Sanders, even some good questions, good pointed questions about his view. And I thought the best, and I can't remember which senator asked him if he thought it was an existential threat, asked Zeldin.
That was Sanders.
Yep. Sanders. Okay. And I think Zeldin, it's just so, it's frustrating. It's just so frustrating that he can't answer that. But in a way, it's good that they're being more cordial, but in a way, it just shows you, I don't think, and I'll say this out loud, I don't think we're going to get revolutionary change. We're going to get the minimalist possible under a Trump revolution. Let's put it that way. I don't see a Zeldin staff going out of the way to really do anything revolutionary, budget-wise, endangerment finding again. I just don't see it.
Okay, cool. We'll have a lot of more time to talk about that later. Let's listen to some more exchanges here between Padilla and Zeldin.
Go ahead. That's one thing.
I can commit to following the Administrative Procedures Act. I will tell you that I will not prejudge any outcomes of any future processes, again, on any issue that any member could bring up here. But Senator, I would reiterate to you today that it is my obligation as EPA Administrator, if confirmed, to follow the law.
Thank you. And another topic we covered in our meeting is one of clean air attainment and the challenges with the federal role and responsibility, state, local role. Half the people in America who live in a non-attainment area live in California, particularly in the Central Valley and the South Coast Air Quality Management District footprint. We have to work together to reduce the sources of toxic emissions. Based on these jurisdictions, it's been challenging. California state and local officials have done pretty much everything they can to tackle this, yet we still have challenges when it comes to ensuring that every Californian, every American living in California can breathe clean air.
There's no toxic air in California.
The federal government to do its part by working a little bit more aggressively, assertively, smartly, and strategically to help reduce these emissions. Help us reach
What places
attainment,
do suffer
not by
from
lowering the
like
bar.
ozone tend to be places that had ozone before industry
Los-
existed
yeah.
also.
Right. Los Angeles has had bad air since the Spanish conquistadors sailed by in the 16th century. It's just got that bowl thing going on, and there's really only so much you can do.
To do just that?
Yes, Senator.
Okay, wonderful. And just a side note, as we
But the air's not unhealthy.
together,
I
ensuring
mean, where were
that,
all the people dropping dead in
jurisdictions
Los
like
Angeles in the 1950s and 1960s and
are not punished
1970s
for
before the Clean Air Act?
if it's resulting
Didn't happen.
from
The air is
recent
ugly, but it's not a health
wildfires,
threat.
smoke and other emissions that have resulted from this disaster or disasters like it.
Yes, Senator, I've heard this concern from other colleagues of yours as well. We're just talking to Senator Kelly about it, as I cited the Yuma example, and he was asking about Maricopa County. It is important that we have common sense, pragmatic policies that are being pursued to address issues just like your concern.
Yeah, to your point, and I'm glad Senator Kelly brought it up, these concerns about fires and their impact, not just the short term, devastation, but the longer term when it comes to public health, when it comes to air quality, is not unique to California. I mean, California is in the news right now, but throughout the West and beyond because of our changing climate and weather patterns. You know, another important topic that we discussed in my office is not just water supply, water quality, but water affordability. Millions of Americans are struggling to keep up with their growing water bills, which have increased nearly 3 times the rate of inflation.
It's a local
According to
issue,
the
not a
EPA,
federal
Well,
government.
water
How about the
utilities
100 billion gallons that
have
California flushed into the
cost
Pacific for the
will
stupid
cost
Delta
water
smell?
utilities more than 1.2
100 billion
trillion
gallons is a lot of water.
20 years to modernize their drinking water and wastewater infrastructure and maintain it. Water utilities, unique to other utilities, rely heavily on ratepayers to cover their costs. The federal government's share of maintaining this infrastructure has come down significantly over the years. So ratepayers are acutely feeling this pressure. And as a result, 1 in 5 households have outstanding and growing water debt. The national water affordability crisis affects both urban and rural communities. So it's not a rural versus urban, blue state versus red state. It is across the board. I shared with you the idea of replicating the LIHEAP program. We have a low-income home energy assistance program because you shouldn't have to freeze in the winter just because you may be low income. The same applies to having water. We know how fundamental water is for life and the economy.
But one quick thing on LIHEAP, when I was in the committee, and Senator Bernie Sanders always promoted that they want energy as expensive as possible so that they can be in charge of the federal government subsidizing people who can't afford their energy. It's kind of like the carbon tax we saw with Trudeau. Raise your taxes and then we can rebate you and everyone will be beholden to the government, turn it into a minimum income, universal basic income style thing. But that LIHEAP is kind of absurd in the face when their policies raise the rates and then they want to subsidize and buy those voters. Anyone getting the LIHEAP subsidies to lower your energy costs are going to be beholden to those politicians. So it's a win-win. High energy costs subsidize people who can't afford them, and then you win-win on both ends.
There's a prior step, Mark. First, it's impose regulations that raise your.
That's what I mean. Yes.
That raise the cost of drinking water, and then.
Yes.
The temporary program was hugely successful, helping families and again, red states and blue states alike. Look forward to working with you to make that program.
They love this guy. That's all I got to say, and that should worry us a little bit.
Chairwoman, thank you, and thank you, Ranking Member, Mr. Vice Chairman. I'm pleased to be back and sitting here at the dais at the EPA committee. Thank you very much for your testimony. Thank you for the conversation we've had in my office. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Let me highlight a couple of things that we may not have talked about when we did visit. I want to describe the Kansas oil and gas industry to you. We are an oil and gas producing state, but our production is done by really small independent companies that produce from what we call stripper wells, which means they produce less than 15 barrels of oil a day. It's a significant component of the Kansas economy and significantly important. And in my view, this small-sized, small businessman and woman who operate oil and gas leases and explore for additional production of oil and gas, the EPA has written one-size-fits-all solutions. We are not the majors, and we are stripper well producers. And I just want your commitment to work with the industry, these small producers, to find right-sized regulations for the circumstances that they're in.
Senator, I would welcome an opportunity to travel to your state to meet with them, whether it's at your office or elsewhere. I want to know about all of your priorities, including this one, but also to make sure that anyone who could provide any type of insight that can make me better informed to make better decisions, that I welcome any of those opportunities for conversations and collaboration.
I think that's a wonderful offer on your part, and I'm very grateful for it. I sometimes am reluctant to ask every nominee that comes before me, would you please come visit Kansas? And you volunteered. So I'm appreciative of that. And I would tell you, I can't imagine the excitement, the opportunity that people in that industry would see to have the capability of talking to somebody with you, like you, directly in a state like Kansas. So thank you. And we'll get on your schedule although you have to say once confirmed. So I look forward to that. In a different vein of energy production, I've created with my colleague Senator Bozeman and others a Sustainable Aviation Fuel Caucus. Kansas and Wichita in particular is the air capital of the world. We produce many more general aviation aircraft than anybody. We manufacture with thousands of employees working in aviation and aerospace. And I want to bring together the opportunity to bring the agricultural aspects of Kansas together with the aviation aspects and pursue the development of SAF, Sustainable Aviation Fuel. I wanted to know, I guess the question would be, we need your help in pursuing opportunities to develop the technology and any regulations that would follow that. And I suppose if you're coming to Kansas, we ought to introduce you to the people who are in the process of developing a new industry as the airline industry shifts itself from fossil fuels to, let me say that differently, from the fuels it uses today to sustainable aviation fuel produced by agricultural byproducts.
Senator, I look forward to that conversation as well.
Okay. The state revolving funds, I don't know whether.
And there is no such thing as sustainable aviation fuel, by the way.
That's incredible. We need it. We all know his vision for making America independent and actually being an exporter and tapping our wealth. One word we haven't used here in that regard is nuclear. Idaho was the birthplace of nuclear energy in the universe. First light
We
bulbs.
missed it, but Rish just also said that wind turbines are a blight and they don't want them in Idaho. So I'd be interested to see what Mr. All of the Above has to say about that.
I don't know if you went to the Idaho National Lab or not, but if you're going to be in the energy business, you really need to. There's a tremendous.
He also talked about eco-terrorist.
Tremendous resurgence.
Yeah, tree spiking.
Of interest in nuclear. You know, the thing kind of went by the way after we had the unfortunate 3 Mile Island incident, but the renaissance in nuclear, not just in America.
Someone's
but
got
around
to
the
teach all these
world,
guys
is
how to
staggering.
pronounce nuclear.
Coming
It's starting
off
to
the
drive me
drawing boards,
nuts.
at
Nuclear?
INL
You don't like that?
in the very near future.
He
our
and
SMR
he
small
and
modular
W
reactors
went to the same
followed
school.
by microreactors. That is going to change the world as far as energy is concerned. And I'm glad to hear you talk about baseload, because when you're talking about nuclear, you're talking about baseload. And I suspect the world, as we go through this century, is going to rely heavily on nuclear. There's tremendous, as in my other hat I wear as chairman of the Foreign Relations Committee, I deal with countries, particularly the Eastern European countries. They're entering contracts, and it is a national security issue because we compete with China, with Russia, and to a degree, France, when these new
In America, it's been nuclear.
projects are coming on board. So thank you for what you're doing. God bless you. We welcome you.
Senator Gallego. Thank you. Governor, thanks again for joining me. And thank you for sitting down in my office and appreciate our time together. We was kind of hit upon this, but one of the
Did he
biggest
just do a
interior
monologue
issues
with no
is going
question?
to be
Yeah.
the Colorado River. Arizona is at the heart of our national defense when it comes to ship making, agriculture, and food security, and of course, home to the 5th largest and best city in the country. In addition, 22 of the 30 Colorado River Basin tribes are in Arizona. So rules governing
Ship
the reduction
making
of
in
the Colorado
Arizona.
River,
That's weird.
water expire at the end of 2026. And post 2026, operation conversations are still ongoing. The lower basin states have put forward a proposal for management of the Colorado River that shares the risk among all states. However, no agreement has been reached and leading to potential conflicts within the basin, which of course we'd all like to avoid. Would you work with Arizona parties and my office so that any termination post 2026 is not overly burdensome to any one state and is consistent with the Colorado River Compact?
Well, Senator, you bring up a really important issue, and this is with the 2026 date looming coming forward. And of course, as you know, Interior does have some specific authorities relative to helping with the lower and upper basin. I would say, as a former chair of Western governors, I know that this has been a battle that's going on as long as there have been people in the West. People are fighting over water in the West. My experience in North Dakota has been more on the Missouri River Basin, but also we've been in some deep battles with Canada because we've got 2 rivers that are in North Dakota that actually flow north into Canada, the Souris River and the Red River to the north. So whether it's international or the complexities of the Missouri, I've got some good understanding and good exposure to this, but I think you can count on that we're going to look for a collaborative solution that serves everyone. It's going to also, we're going to have to look for innovation on ways on the conservation side, because we can't make more water, but if we can use what we have wisely, that's going to look for the best solutions for all. But I appreciate that you're engaged in this. I know how important it is to Arizona and its economy.
Thanks, Governor. In our meeting, we also discussed a lot about our tribal communities and tribal nations. I'm very glad.
Does anybody know why they can't
background
build
understanding and
why
relationships?
they can't get water from the Pacific Ocean into
tribal law enforcement.
Arizona?
Some of the bills that I've put forward to increase tribal law enforcement. But
Sterling?
unfortunately, we see just high rates of missing.
Why can't they get water from the Pacific into Arizona? Looks, looks feasible.
Regulations, well, it's as feasible as shipping water from Colorado to California, right? All it is running pipelines the other way and desalinization.
Funding for tribal law enforcement, but our federal budget cuts really put all that work at risk. So can you, tell me or think about, like, what is your plan to work collaboratively with Congress and tribes across the
Hearing
country
about the shipping
on tribal law enforcement
industry in Arizona reminds me of
and how do you plan
a Tool song that talks about Arizona Bay.
Well, I think there's nothing partisan about enforcing the law and protecting the citizens of the United States. And one of the great tragedies in our country is the lack of law enforcement on tribal lands, and the fact that we've got organized crime that is, preying on those the gaps. They're aware that the gaps are there, and whether it's the training centers. Senator Hoeven has been particularly supportive, along with Senator Kramer. We don't have enough training centers across the nation for the northern tribes or the southern tribes. So we need more recruiting. We need more staffing. We need lots of other things that are going on. But we also, you mentioned first time it's come up, but the missing and murdered Indigenous women. I mean, this is again an unseen tragedy in America. I think the FBI list is now over 6,000 unsolved cases, and I believe again that it is a complete tragedy. It seems that if we lose a college student at spring break, it's a Netflix series and the whole nation knows her name personally. And then we have these same individual tragedies that happen over and over again in Indian country, and people aren't even aware that it's going on. So we've got to change our entire approach to this.
And unfortunately, in the last 4 years,
Indian country is a weird phrase to use in this context.
Why is it that the Indian tribes still don't want to join the rest of us?
Last 4 years, we've learned from reclamation that
I
Glen
can't believe you
Canyon
said
Dam
Indian
has
country as
some
opposed to Native American
design flaws
country.
that limits
Well,
its ability to pass water at lower
the term Indian
elevations,
country usually
which
refers
means
to
we have to
something a little
fix
bit
that dam,
less
and
friendly
pretty
than
soon we need the ability to
than what I
pass
think
water
he was
around the
going
dam
for.
to
He
the
probably
edge
should have just said the
through it,
reservations, but
especially if the hydrology in the region.
Why
gets
don't they
worse.
join the rest of us?
How would you make fixing the dam that delivers water to the
How are we going to
Grand
get Greenland, but we
Canyon, and
can't?
30 million people downstream
We
from
can't
that
even
more
capture our own
efficient
country.
and of course,
To be fair to them, if us had slaughtered their entire culture, I'm not sure I want to be joining us.
Issue I was not aware of about the Glen Canyon Dam.
Well, I don't know about you, but my family came here after that was all over. It's time to kiss and make up.
Bureau of Reclamation.
My family
No,
came both before and lived here because I'm part native.
And
Unlike Warren, I can actually trace my
privilege
roots.
of being
Well, as the only panelist
Actually,
there,
my better half is related to Winfield Scott, who was in charge of the Trail of Tears. So I take what I said
As we
back.
know, we got to have more reservoir capability, because part of the issue we're facing is that perhaps we not only need to fix, we got to upgrade some of these. So that
We
can
Burnett's
more
have long
storage.
memories.
I'd love to work with that person. Thank you. Thank you, Governor. Yield back.
Senator Hyde Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I think you guys will be very happy that I'm probably the last one, and this will soon be over. But I just certainly appreciate your willingness and your eagerness. I enjoyed the visit we had in my office and the sincerity that you have, but most of all, your capabilities.
It's
You're
funny,
so
all
capable
these
for this
nominees must bring
position, and
donuts
I'm
and
very
coffee and some other stuff because everyone seems to love the office visits. Every senator talks lovingly about the office visit and how great they were.
I think the civility is nauseating. I don't care who does it. I mean, my God.
I'm sure
we
they
have
had.
we have real problems in this country, and everyone's just so sweet.
I'm sure they served
But
tea and
we're very
crumpets.
blessed with the National Park Services that we have several.
Just in case it hasn't been done, I think it needs to be done, and I hate to be the guy to do it. But
tourism,
Doug Burgum, worked for Bill Gates. Bill Gates gave his first political contribution. North Dakotans has his comment. Bill Burgum, his comment on Bill Gates. Bill Gates' leadership and commitment to improving the world around him was an inspiration for finding creative solutions to 21st century challenges. And that was way back. He has a Facebook post still up. Great photo of him and Bill Gates. So just remember, Burgum is not going to stand up to the establishment, not going to stand up to strongly on the narratives. I go back again to Reagan's first term. So many people we thought were great conservatives, and probably including Howard Baker and George H.W. Bush, turned out when the political tide changed and Reagan was gone, they showed their true colors. And I just want to say, we have to keep pressure on these nominees. Not so much Chris Wright, but certainly Zeldin, certainly Burgum, in order to follow the Trump agenda. And Trump has to keep pressure, but that's always hard to do. So just remember, that's important where they came from, who they admire. Burgum admires Bill Gates.
I wish you felt more strongly about things.
I just wanted to throw that out. So.
Well, I wish Bill Gates had smited me with his money.
Yeah.
Are you guys done with Burgum? You want to go over to EPA again?
Looks like he's about to be done.
Yeah, he's boring.
She said she's the last.
Yeah, Burgum is really boring.
Anybody's asked this question before, but it'd be.
Well, they're asking
So
about
we're going to go to
subsurface.
second round, and
Second
we'll do it in the same
Woo!
order as the folks that were
Overtime.
here. Before I begin my round, I would like to put into the record a January 3rd support
Mark,
letter.
you
from
saw the
former
Washington
chairman of
Post
Suffolk
article
County
about
Water
Burgum
Authority
today, right?
State. The EPA
No, I
requires
didn't. What was
About
that?
how he's going to take carbon capture nationwide.
Oh, I saw the headline. Yeah, I haven't read the article yet. Yeah, I thought someone had told me he was backing away from that in private meetings. He's not going to.
Yeah, that's what I had heard too. Well, who knows what the Washington Post is reporting, but
Yeah.
Head exploded.
Well, here's the thing, and this spending money in Washington isn't controversial. Wasting billions, trillions. I don't think Republicans are going to allow carbon capture to go away. And then you have to actually say, how much of a fight do we want to put up? Is that our fight, or is that an Elon Musk, Vivek's fight?
Look,
I don't
I mean,
think anyone's going to win this. I'm a cynic.
it's another one of those situations where we're fighting the API and stuff more than anybody else on this.
Class 6 wells.
I just,
are used to
Linnea
inject
wrote about
carbon
this back in,
dioxide
I don't know,
into
July,
deep rock
critiqued
formations.
Burgum on
Advancing
carbon capture and climate
storage
issues.
technology is obviously very important.
We just have to
my
be
state.
realists about
We
what the Trump
provided
administration
EPA
really
funding
means.
to
And
I'm also
it's not a revolutionary shift in America. I'm sorry. I just don't see that happening. I see it
kind
in
of
a
agree.
fun year or two.
I'm getting worried about Doge. I saw reports yesterday that Trump wants
And to
Vivek to
date,
take
only
that
3 of
Senate
these
seat,
states have granted
the Ohio Senate, JD Vance's Senate seat. It's going to be hard to do Doge from the Senate.
Yeah, well, I've lost a lot of luster with Vivek because of the immigration thing, and obviously Elon. I was always liked his free speech stuff. I got to tell you, JD Vance scares me just because of where he was 5 years ago politically, and again, I go back to Reagan's term. You just don't know if these people are genuine. Is JD Vance going to be this populist conservative 10 years from now? I don't know. So, and he's also backed by a billionaire. So again, these are all establishment figures we're talking about here. So,
right.
if you look back, but I should shut up now. But go ahead.
Donnie has a good point here. We have a carbon capture report coming out on Tuesday from the Heartland Institute. So if anyone is interested in that stuff, follow us on Twitter and on our website, heartland.org, and you will be able to see that report when it comes out. We're looking at, exactly the kind of topics that Burgum is apparently pushing and why it would be not so good for any of us, or at least a big waste of money and everybody's time.
We talk about what it is, why it fails, and why it will be a big drain for no benefit. You know,
manufacturing, infrastructure, transportation, doesn't matter what kind of energy, renewable energy,
now
pipelines, whatever.
Vance might be like the first Bush, right? Bush was a liberal Republican when he was picked as the vice president, and he was loyal. He was loyal to Reagan. He did what Reagan wanted. But he went back to who he was,
and that's
who
what
he
I'm
truly
saying.
was.
Hey, Vance might turn out. You're exactly right. I just want people to remember history on this stuff because it's so easy to get caught up that this is transformational. It may or may not be. I think Trump is a transformational figure, but it's just almost impossible to find enough people to surround him.
Look, JD he's very young and he hasn't had a lot of time to think about all these things. He's got like almost
pursue
no
permitting
experience in
reform
any
as
of this
well.
stuff. So
As far as EPA
you really don't know
jurisdiction
how he's going to
goes,
be. Hopefully he'll learn
we
from Trump.
see a role of the
But even then,
EPA,
he's
for
still going to be a
example,
young guy in 4
with
years.
environmental
Yeah.
impact statements. There are different issues where there will be opportunities for the EPA to follow its obligations under the law. There's a possibility that Congress might choose to make changes to the law on items that are under EPA jurisdiction. I would look forward to doing my part to make sure that the EPA is not holding up any opportunities to be able to pursue sound applications that otherwise would be and should be approved.
Yeah, I think a lot of times in the public domain, permitting reform means to certain people skirting the rules or breezing through environmental reviews without really taking them seriously or actually having them science-based, as we've talked a lot about today. That's not what permitting reform means. Permitting reforms means make these environmental clean air, clean water rules and others and other agencies work together and work so that we are getting the right result of clean air, clean water, but we're able to move forward. And so I look forward to that. Here's another West Virginia issue very quickly. And it's the Muddy Creek Restoration Project. It's 19 miles of waterways that has acid mine drainage. And West Virginia went about with in coordination with the past Trump administration, and it was initially championed by the Biden administration to deliver real results in cleaning up this area of our state. It was a true win-win. The Biden administration, for some reason, which we can't figure out, flip-flopped on this, and they just started putting more burdensome, costly, and a much slower cleanup process. So you're still having your acid mine drainage while we're getting hung up here. It threatens projects like Muddy Creek and discourages other communities from pursuing similar efforts to achieve real environmental remediation and benefits. Will you commit to me working with me in the state to try to reverse these counterproductive changes and cut the red tape and restore this for more cost-effective, but also better environmental results?
Yes, Chairman Capito, I know how much of a priority this is. You've been outspoken on this issue. It's my commitment to work with you as soon as, if confirmed, as soon as I'm in that
This is another
position.
issue where it's all
I'd
about
welcome that
money.
opportunity.
Congress has
Senator
given
Whitehouse.
EPA money.
Thank you again, Chairman.
And
Mr.
then
Zeldin, I have
the members
something of a,
expect that money to come back to
life
their
experience
states.
PhD in fossil fuel pressure politics.
Here we go.
And they'll be coming after you hard. And they'll be feeling very entitled based on their political spending toward a Trump victory. I have two questions when you're faced with that. The first is that prominent voices in Trump world have been saying that it is important to traumatize EPA's workforce to drive them out. They've been saying that it's important to cut EPA's workforce by 2/3 or more, not just Washington, but the field, the entire organization. And they've been saying that it's important to destroy the professional civil service protections of EPA's workforce. How do you respond to those three threats?
Senator Whitehouse, as I've stated earlier,
President, 100%.
my desire, if confirmed as EPA administrator, is to increase productivity of the EPA. I want to be able to help lead this agency in a way that all of you on both sides of the aisle can be proud of, for us to be accountable and transparent. I want maximum collaboration, not just with Congress, but internally within the EPA. I've been hugely impressed with the level of talent stepping up to serve at EPA. And that is the pressure that I am feeling at this moment, is to bring out the best of EPA to make sure that we are fulfilling our mission of protecting public health and the environment.
You will not support executing on those three threats.
Executing.
My commitment to you is exactly as I had stated, Senator Whitehouse, and I am not coming into this position with any threat. My position as I sit here is a promise, it is an obligation, and it is a commitment to do my part, to do the best job possible in leading the EPA to fulfill its mission in a way that follows its obligation under the law and is one that this committee can be proud of.
The second question that I have is
that while you've made a lot of good and sound statements here today, it's one thing to say things in this environment, and it's another thing to stand by those guns when the pressure comes at you. And if you look at your past, if you look at your influence and advocacy work with American First Policy Institute and America First Works, the big donors have been pharma, the massive corporate lobby, Goldman Sachs, a Morgan Stanley fund.
What do they have to do with
All
EPA's
leftists,
role?
by the way.
Billionaire
What do they have
fracking
to do with EPA's role?
CEO. We don't know who the rest
But
of the
all
donors are
leftists.
because
Yeah.
AFPI keeps their
In the end, he
much
should
of
have
their
said,
donor list
I commit to
secret,
following the
but we
law
do
and
know of
President
those.
Trump's
Your
directive
fellow
under
board
the law.
members at America First Works include the billionaire CEO fracker, the former CEO of the Texas Public Policy Foundation, which I view as a very significant player in the fossil fuel funded climate denial armada.
Do you
Drink
guys
climate
consider
denial.
TPF
The
significant?
successor to that Texas Public Policy Foundation.
We have an
CEO.
armada. I didn't know we
And,
had an armada.
a third individual called the Chief of Intelligence and Research at that same, in my view, climate denial front group. In your political work,
Say our
you've
name.
taken nearly $300,000 from the oil and gas industry back to 2007. You've had large campaign support from Koch Incorporated, which gave a total of about $60,000 when you count up all the contributions to PACs and campaign funds.
Come on.
David Koch himself maxed out to you, and Koch PAC gave $20,000 to your Lee PAC. In the wake of being so surrounded with so much corporate and fossil fuel influence, I want to give you two opportunities. One is to answer to me now, how is it that you will be able to separate yourself from the influence of these people and these interests when they come demanding things that they think they've
I commit to
earned
treating them
politically?
just like you treat your donors,
And
Senator.
I'll also turn that into a QFR so that you can, with a little bit more basis for reflection, make a more complete answer. So with that, over to you for your response, sir.
Senator, I don't need any extra time for reflection on that one. There is no person who has ever provided any level of support to me or anyone else who has any special influence with me. When I was in the Army, I wore around my dog tags the 7 Army values. The acronym is leadership: loyalty, duty, respect, selfless service, honor, integrity, and personal courage. It is important for me to have always been able to approach this position with a clear conscience to make decisions that I can live with for my entire life. There is no dollar, large or small, that can influence the decisions that I make, who has access to me, and how I am ruling in my obligations under the law. Senator, I'm happy to enthusiastically answer that question on any day on the spot, and I would never need any extra amount of time of reflection.
Well, good luck
Nice.
standing up to these guys because they're going to come at you.
Thank you. I
I'm
understand
actually,
that,
I'm like blushing a little bit that
5-minute
White House
break
says that we have an
in
armada.
our
That's
best
kind of,
interest. Would you like to
Yeah,
do
I
that
like
now?
the
I'm
idea of an
excited.
armada.
That's nice.
I'll have to get my pirate flag out.
We'll come back in 5
I want to
minutes.
be on the flagship, by the way. None of the
Looks like
minors.
we're that would
Looks
be
like we're
the
getting-
SS Junk Science.
The Heartland Institute is definitely the flagship.
There
We're,
no doubt.
we're the
No
flagship,
doubt.
100%.
So we're getting a 5-minute break.
We're a battle cruiser. We're a battle cruiser.
Yeah.
Hey, so this is great. So actually, I didn't think we'd get breaks. I thought from like yesterday it would be one straight shot, 1 round each, done in 3 hours or so, and done. And this is turning into like a Kavanaugh hearing, or at least a 1-day one, where they
Well, we got a break.
It's
If we got a break,
agonizing, though,
if we got a
because they're
break,
being so nice.
we got a break. Let's run some of those interior clips that we can respond to.
That's exactly what I was going to ask. I can, and Andy, producer, don't worry about it. I got them here on my desk. I'll pull them up myself. So we have Zeldin talking about. Well, we didn't see a lot of the Burgum one, so maybe we should go to Burgum
let's go to
first.
Big Burgum.
Burgum, to Steve Malloy's consternation, did talk about all of the above energy. We did not see that clip. So let's see that clip here. And
Was
I'll
it
just, I'll,
was
I'll
it
bring it up.
Texas Policy Institute that White House said was part of the
Texas
IMF?
Public Policy
Policy.
Foundation,
Yeah.
Texas
Yeah,
Public Policy.
TPPF, one of our
where Brooke Rollins came from.
Yeah, I'm
and
following them.
before. Yeah, I
right. And Jason Isaac used to be with them. Now he's
Huh.
with his own outfit. So
I
yeah,
was a
they're-
senior fellow there back in the
I
early
remember.
2000s.
Yeah. So that
And
yeah,
they are
they're
not out front in climate denial, not at all.
No,
no.
they do some good
We
work on
undertake
energy.
that project.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, here's you can back it up to the beginning there. I'll do it. There we go. So yeah, so this is Angus King talking to Doug Burgum. Let's listen in just a little bit.
We undertake that project.
Senator King, certainly you've got great wind resources in Maine. We've got good wind resources in North Dakota. Not every state is lucky to have that. The resources that we do, where the wind is blowing, maybe that flat ground helps us on that.
They don't want 'em in
Very
Maine.
few trees to stop the wind. But I would say the key here you mentioned is base load versus the intermittent, because we've got to have the right balance, and we maybe have tipped a little too far in one direction. So I think that's the key piece for us. The key short-term emergency.
But you do see the value of wind power. A third of your state's electricity comes from that source.
Yeah, and most of that we export, and so I think our neighbors are happy to have that. But I would also say that, again, it is we need an all-of-the-above strategy. It's what we've had in North Dakota.
And a balance.
It's
grid.
it's a balance, but we need more. We need more, and the thing we're short of most right now is base load.
All right, Steve, have at it. How disappointed are you with that?
I mean, it's just kind of confusing. We don't need wind. It doesn't really work. He said it was intermittent. The worse we make our grid, of course, the more we need to go in the opposite direction. So I just don't like, he just doesn't really have a coherent thought about this. I guess, selling wind, North Dakota gets subsidized for wind and then sells the electricity. So I suppose it's a moneymaker. But there's just there's no thought to what this actually costs and what the benefits are. There's no benefit. It makes electricity more expensive. It's not doing anything for the environment. It's just a scam. It's like all these other green scams, ethanol, solar, all this stuff.
He's right that we need more base load. That's the one point he was dead right on. We need more base. But what's interesting to me is that Angus King is asking this because the people in his state have fought offshore wind tooth and nail. The governor supported a sample case, but she said she wouldn't support any more big stuff off wind. So for King to be pushing that, because they're not building onshore wind in Maine, they're building offshore, and that's the most expensive form of electric power outside of battery.
The gas industry would be making a lot more money if it wasn't for wind, because all that wind would be supplied, all that wind electricity would actually be supplied by gas and maybe the coal industry
or coal. Yeah. Or
I'm
coal.
curious. I'm curious if North Dakota, I'm trying to look it up now and I haven't been able to find the numbers as solidly as I'd like yet. I see a lot of kind of advertising, but I'd be curious to know if North Dakota actually receives 35% or whatever of their electricity from wind power, or if their installed capacity is 35% of their total installed capacity. I'd be curious if that's the case, because a lot of the time they talk about this stuff interchangeably. And to the audience who may or may not understand the difference here, when you have a wind developer or green proponents coming and saying that, like, half of the state's electricity is wind, and then you look at it and it says half of the state's installed electricity generation capacity is wind, that just means that if wind was working, if it was working to its peak efficiency all the time, then you would be getting half of your electricity from wind. But it almost never actually acts that way. It's the capacity factor for wind is something like 30%.
33.
Yeah. And so you're only going to get 30% of your installed capacity out of it. And so it's It's very, very questionable. I'd be curious to know if they're actually getting that much electricity. And that's why you hear a lot of engineers complaining about how much overbuilding needs to be done in order to, make wind and solar as effective as possible, because you need to install way more than you actually need. And even then, when the wind isn't blowing, wind generation is zero, no matter how many wind turbines you have. So,
Or when it's blowing too hard and they have
or
to,
when it's blowing too hard.
so,
Yeah, and sometimes
thing
you
with-
have to actually pay others to take your electricity because.
well, that's the thing. It's North Dakota. You're right. We should look at the real data, but North Dakota may be getting a lot of it. Remember, it's flat. It is windy, and they have a very low population. So maybe it's getting a higher percentage, which is also why it can ship so much energy out of state.
Yeah. Well, it looks like they're coming back, guys.
Okay.
But go ahead, Steve. Go ahead. We'll put it up with that
No,
sound down.
he seemed to think that the wind was getting exported. I imagine North Dakota needs reliable energy, to run its industry and for its people because it's pretty cold there.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead, Keely. Go ahead, please. Get the volume up.
Is this round 2 for the jackbooted thugs?
Yeah. Keely, I think the
Screen audio is muted.
The
In
audio is
StreamYard.
muted in StreamYard over there. There we go.
Power America, power our allies, produce American energy, and at the same time, lower emissions. Can you
Yes,
commit?
Senator, absolutely. American innovation has been critical, and it will be critical going into the future. That's something that President Trump has often spoke of.
Yeah.
And I believe it's also one of the reasons why we saw so much support for him in this last November's election.
In Alaska, we are working, and I've talked to President Trump about just recently, we have a very large-scale LNG project that would increase, would reduce our trade deficit by billions by exporting clean-burning Alaska natural gas to our Asian allies, get clean-burning Alaska gas to Americans, and would produce thousands of American jobs. Can I get your commitment to help us work on that large-scale LNG project, which will help continue these global emission reductions?
Senator, I'd welcome the opportunity to, if confirmed, to be able to work with you on this and other issues.
Great. I have another map I want to show you. Real quick, you and I talked about this issue of leaded aviation fuel. That's a huge issue to my constituents, what we call avgas. We got it, an extension for Alaska and the FAA, given our pilot safety issues, our aviation safety issues. There was this congressman, I forget his name, from New Jersey. He tried to limit this. My view, he should be more focused on cleaning up New Jersey than worrying about aviation safety in Alaska. Can I get your commitment to work with me on this avgas issue as we discussed in my office?
Senator, as I gave you my commitment then, reiterate it here today for all your constituents to hear. We had a very long substantive conversation on a lot of topics that you're fighting for Alaska, and I welcome the opportunity to be able to work with you on all of that.
Great, thank you. Let me give you one final map and one final question. It's a little complicated. This is the American Medical Association study on life expectancy changes in America, okay? This was from 1980 to 2014. Purple and dark blue, that's where life expectancy changes happen the most, okay? Up to 13 years. Unfortunately, see yellow, red, certain places there was a life expectancy decrease. That's mostly the opioid epidemic.
That's not what
My
that
state
chart
led
says.
this. It led it because Alaska Natives, which is where most of these communities are, over about
Yeah, it
20%
says
of
it
my
didn't grow as
population,
fast there.
started at a
Doesn't
real
say
low
it
level.
declined.
Real low, lowest life expectancy. Then what happened on the North Slope, what happened out in the Aleutian Island chain, what happened in the Northwest Arctic, Burrow, resource development happened. Oil and gas happened. Open up fisheries happened. Resource development happened. And people's lives increase on average by up to 13 years. So here's my quick issue. This is a matter of life and death in my state. And the indigenous people in particular, who I care deeply about, have benefited tremendously from resource development. President Biden comes in with his Secretary of Interior. She doesn't listen to Native people. They issued 68 executive orders to shut down resource development in my state. which is going to hurt people, hurt their life expectancy. So when we talk about all this stuff about, oh, we're against resource development, oil and gas, from my state, from my constituents, this is a matter of life and death, and it's brought gymnasiums and health clinics and water and sewer. So can I get your commitment to work with me on these issues, on resource development that benefit the native people tremendously of my state? The Biden administration is talking about, oh, environmental justice. This is environmental injustice when they shut down Alaska Native communities' opportunity to develop their resources. And, you know, their focus on minority communities, I think that's great, but they've had a big asterisk during 4 years of Biden and Secretary Holland, not for Alaska Natives.
I like
and it's
this
an
guy.
outrage. This helps my communities. And can I get your commitment to work with the Alaska Native communities, indigenous communities of my state on this issue, on the other issue you talk about, contaminated lands, water and sewer? We have communities that don't have clean water and flush toilets. I really want your help on this. We didn't get the help from the Biden administration. They talked the big game, communities of color. They didn't care about the Alaska Native communities, and I need your help on this.
Understood, Senator. You have my commitment to work with you on this.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Well, I mean, generally, wealthier is healthier
Madam
across
Chair.
the country. It's why we need more development. You know, we have all this craziness about make America healthy again, and they're talking about banning all food additives, all kinds of crazy stuff like that. I mean, the way Trump can make America healthier is by making it wealthier. And that's going to be the most universal solution to that issue.
And to get
She's
the
been working to
government
clean
out
up
of the
these
way.
mines
You mean
for
not
decades now, but the
Not RFK going after food dye? Sorry.
Believe it or not.
it contaminates water, and just the radiation itself is causing
Who's the senator that asked him about the jackbooted thugs at EPA, the armed
One
guard?
step which was taken during the last Trump administration was to establish
he
a
is.
regional
This is the senator?
office
Okay.
called the Office of Mountains, Deserts, and Plains, which would focus on cutting through the bureaucracy and accelerating the cleanup of mines in the West.
Back to the
Senator
space-
Lummis and I introduced legislation last Congress, which passed this committee unanimously, called the Legacy Mine Cleanup Act.
We need to reopen
which would
those mines.
authorize the creation of the office and accelerate mine cleanup across the Western United States. So will you commit to having your team review the legislation quickly so we can then incorporate EPA's feedback before we introduce the bill this year?
I guarantee I'll review it by the next
And will
4
you
years.
commit to ensuring the issue of abandoned uranium mines remains a priority for the EPA?
We need to reopen those things.
Yeah,
Thank you
we
for
need
that.
uranium
And
mines
then
right now.
one
We
final
need
thing I want to discuss with you is, and I know you've spoken about this during the hearing already today. I was not in the room, but my understanding is you talked about PFAS. And as we discussed in my office last week, groundwater is the backup source of drinking water for both Phoenix and Tucson. And it's in an aquifer mostly under the city of Tucson, where Gabby and I live. And this has become more critical, this backup water supply, as the drought conditions in the West has worsened. But especially
not
the
what data
groundwater under
shows.
Tucson in those aquifers have been contaminated with growing PFAS plumes. And the city had to shut down nearly 30 groundwater wells because the water exceeded EPA's drinking water limits. And to date,
EPA's
the
limit
city has
is
spent
like
more than
1
$71
part per
million
trillion.
on remediation
And
costs.
1 part per trillion.
And are in negotiations with
I'm hearing more
EPA
about
Region
PFAS
9,
than climate change, which
with the Air
surprises me.
Force, with the state, with Tucson Airport, and other private parties to resolve this. And throughout this process and spanning across presidential administrations, EPA Region 9 has been a consistent partner in addressing these challenging issues. So, Mr. Zeldin, if confirmed, will you commit to working with my team and the city of
EPA
Tucson
standard
to
for
address the
PFAS in
Tucson
drinking
PFAS
water is
contamination?
4 parts
Yes,
per
Senator.
trillion. You could never detect that
So
before.
thank you, Mr. Zeldin. Thank you for spending the time. I know this has been a long process and
And I'm convinced
and a
there's no
long,
study that shows 4
hearing.
parts per
Great
trillion.
picture,
Great seeing your
Andy.
family here. And
Convinced there's no evidence that
look
4 parts
forward
per
to
trillion has any health effect on anybody.
Right.
for the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. Senator Ricketts.
Thank you, Chairman Capito, for having this second round of questions. I appreciate it. And
Thank you,
Congressman
Chip.
Zeldin, presuming that you get confirmed to be the EPA administrator, you're going to have to work to reestablish the credibility, reestablish the trust for the EPA, and that's going to involve a process of
Getting rid of a lot of
transparency and
people.
good faith action on the EPA's part. Part of what I expect you to bring back is accountability. President Biden's EPA had a $41.5 billion with a B program to carry out EV mandates and environmental justice. How many additional dollars went to the Inspector General's office to conduct oversight over those IRA funds that went out? Zero, none. Yeah, that's a problem when you're spending that kind of dollars. Can we have your commitment that you will look into this to make sure those dollars were spent appropriately, that the process was followed properly for all those dollars, and to make sure that any dollars that were not spent appropriately, in fact, Senator Capito and I actually had a press conference on how some of these dollars were being distributed. But if they weren't being distributed, you'll work to claw back those taxpayer dollars?
Yes, Senator.
Great, thank you. We talked a little bit earlier also about the EV mandate. Part of what this IRA dollars we're supposed to be pushing is this EV mandate. Of the 147 communities in my state that are classified as cities, 99 of them don't have a single EV charger. If you're living in communities like Bloomfield, Alliance, Valentine, you're 45 minutes from the nearest charging station. And in my state, EV adoption is like 2%, when nationally it's about 7%. And of course, the current mandate that the EPA is pursuing with their emission standards was to have 2/3 of all new vehicles being sold as EVs in the year 2032. That's just clearly not realistic. And again, as we discussed, we should allow American innovation to be able to help us reduce the impact on the environment, not have the administration pick one solution that they want to push. Do you commit to rolling back these out-of-touch mandates that are costly to Americans and dangerous to our energy grid, increase our reliance on our adversaries like the People's Republic of China?
Senator, it is my obligation, if confirmed, to be following my obligations under the law. And with regards to the Administrative Procedures Act, rules, laws set out that guide the way I answer that question. I'm not allowed to prejudge outcomes going into rulemaking to ensure that there is durability of any decision to be made at the end of the process, where my answer to that question could potentially be used against any type of a rule regulation that is made. I will tell you that I have heard concerns from you and many others in this chamber of how important it is to look at rules that are currently on the books. I don't sit before you with any type of announcement that I'm able to make of any rules that are going to change upon confirmation. I will tell you that I will not prejudge outcomes. However, it is my commitment to follow my obligations under the laws set by Congress, to look at laws, decisions that have been made by the United States Supreme Court, and to make sure that we are pursuing common sense, pragmatic solutions that make sense to you, that you can defend when going back to the constituents that you fight so hard for from your home state. So I look forward to the opportunity of being able to make you proud, being able to make this entire committee, the chairman, proud in hitting the ground running to do my part so that the EPA is being accountable to you as a senator and is accountable to your constituents as taxpayers and as Americans.
Right. Well, thank you, Congressman Zeldin. One of the things we also talked about was certainty. We talked about it in the context of the RVOs. But there's another area of certainty that we've talked about, and we need to continue to talk about. The Supreme Court's Sackett versus the EPA decision was a clear directive to narrow the scope of the federal jurisdiction on the Clean Waters Act. And here's just one of the things that just drives me nuts, because this has not just been a Biden administration. This happened under the Obama administration. The Clean Water Act over 50 times says navigable waters. Navigable waters means you can put a boat on it and go someplace. That's the Merriam-Webster definition in really broad terms. Clearly out of scope of what the Congress's intent was. And the decision in Sackett was intended to provide clarity to producers. President Biden's WOTUS revisions have only confused it by talking about things like relatively permanent waters or unclear determinations on which waters are actually jurisdictional under law. Farmers and ranchers in Nebraska deserve better than an EPA taking years to decide the best way to regulate a ditch that might someday hold water. Do you plan on providing clear and durable waters of the U.S. guidance to producers as an administrator?
Senator, I believe that it's incredibly important for the EPA to provide clear and durable guidance as it relates to waters of the U.S. The Sackett decision is easy to understand for any of those property owners in your state, yet still they have questions as it relates to the rules and regulations that are on the books. It should be as clear as possible so that your people can understand without having to go hire an attorney or someone else to assist them with compliance and definitions.
Great. Well, again, I would just remind you that the Clean Water Act says navigable waters. It's a pretty plain English definition. Congress's intent could not have been more clear. And so just remind you as you're going through that process to keep that in mind. Thank you very much, Congressman Zeldin.
Thank you.
Chairman.
No soggy wetlands.
Thank you, Madam
no-
Chair, again, and congratulations.
No
on your
streams,
position.
no farmland.
And respectfully to my friend from Nebraska, there is no EV mandate. Doesn't exist. There is no EV mandate.
Yes.
It's not a mandate. It's a clean car standard. It's just technology neutral.
We've called it something different. So it's not a
driven by
it's not an
American
EV mandate. We just call it something different.
protect our
Why didn't you
environment.
say that before? Gosh.
God.
Repeating that every time.
What a little
So,
snake.
again, Congressman, Project 2025 proposes
No,
to
he's a big
eliminate
snake.
the Office of Enforcement and Compliance Assurance at the EPA. Do you agree with that proposal?
Now,
To
Senator,
eliminate-
first off, I've never read any word of Project.
No, I'm not.
2025.
I'm not going to ask if you read it. But do you agree with the proposal to eliminate the Office of Enforcement and Compliance Assurance at the EPA?
While that is something that I had never thought of before you're asking that question, no. It's an important function of the EPA, and we've had good extended conversations here about that topic during today's hearing, Senator.
Okay, so again, it's just
Why not
that
just say
prompted the
I'll follow
question,
the law,
and the
whatever
answer
that
is
and
a
just
very
answer
good
the
answer. Thank
question.
you. On the EPA Clean Car Rule, it's projected to cut air pollution and prevent about 2,500 premature deaths in a single year. And over the life of it, it would obviously be tens of thousands of lives which are saved. And it would save drivers $46 billion in fuel costs, 15 billion barrels of oil that would not have to be used, and $6,000 over the life of the new vehicle. So if confirmed, are you planning to initiate a new rulemaking that could undermine those clean car standards?
Senator, if confirmed, I cannot sit before you and announce the initiation of any new rules. I have no announcements to make of rules that are going to change, and I plan on following my obligations under the law to ensure that throughout my tenure, if confirmed as EPA administrator, that I never prejudge outcomes heading into that process.
Okay, well, again, the savings are quite profound for American consumers, dollars in their pockets, because of those much higher standards that don't require oil to be put into gasoline tanks, where we put about 70% of all the oil that we consume. In September, RFK Jr., the Health and Human Services nominee, went on the Dr. Phil show, and he said, quote, it's glyphosate, which is the active ingredient in Roundup. It's the pesticides, it's atrazine, it's PFOAs, the forever chemicals, where mass poisoning an entire generation of kids. Do you agree?
We're living longer than
with
ever.
That conclusion by RFK Jr. that these pesticides are mass poisoning the kids?
RFK knows nothing. How could
Senator,
Zeldin
I
know
would
anything?
welcome an opportunity to be able to read through all of the science and research that's being cited to support that conclusion, to be able to answer that question, following the review of that material. That's a review that I would need to I would need to engage in.
Yeah, it's obviously a very serious question, and it's one that hopefully would have the EPA working with HHS on a resolution of that issue. And in the 2.5 years since its passage, the Inflation Reduction Act has spurred the creation of 400,000 jobs and $420 billion in investment. 193 million of direct federal spending actually has gone to your former congressional district since 2022. So regardless of your stance on the bill back then, it did become law, and more than $68 billion has already been appropriated by the EPA from the IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure law. So are you going to ensure that EPA's ongoing implementation of grants, which have already been fairly awarded under existing laws like the IRA and the bipartisan infrastructure law, that they're not impeded or held up for political reasons?
Senator, my commitment is to follow the law as it relates to so much of what's getting discussed during this hearing. That is the obligation that motivates me. I have to be prepared to sit before this committee and be able to answer questions as far as it relates to funds that have gone out the door, not just currently, but also in the future. It's important for me to get my hands, my head all wrapped around everything that's been going out the door. Senator, I was concerned when there was a video a few weeks ago of a political appointee at the EPA who was talking about how they were tossing gold bars off the Titanic to distribute billions of dollars before Inauguration Day on Monday. I don't know at all what grants were being referenced with that repeated comment. It was also referenced in that answer to you and to answer to every member of this.
Oh no.
Oh no.
They killed him. Yeah, it shows it's blacked out on the website.
80% of all of those grants have gone to Republican districts. So,
Gotta buy those votes.
That you should keep.
Yeah, who cares?
In
If it's
mind.
creating-
Hey,
if it's creating boondoggles over
earlier,
the Republican
earlier,
district,
The
earlier they're
impartiality
talking about all the
of what's-
graft, and now he's saying, "Oh, we're paying you off.
Yeah.
Here's the graft. Keep supporting us."
Half the money went to 5 battleground states before the election.
And by the way, right here on the Climate Realism Show, we covered that O'Keefe Media Group reference to the throwing gold bars off the Titanic. And so you got to watch every Friday at 1 p.m. Eastern time. You get the scoop on this way ahead of everybody else.
You should take attendance.
Given out if a blue presidency at the EPA, led to 80% of the money going to red districts. So is that I just want a presumption of innocence from you in terms of the decisions that were made. On
Right. Yes, Senator. I just want to be able to account to
I
you.
appreciate that, but I just need your
Yes, Senator.
your assurance that you do assume that most of this was done fairly.
No.
Why?
Senator,
Why would he assume that?
I would only can assume. I can only assume as I sit here.
Yeah.
That upon review, that there will be, I will find out about all sorts of funding that went out the door that was following the law as written by Congress. All I'm saying is that I want to have the ability to sit before Chairman Capito, who's been very vocal on this issue, and be able to answer her question on a specific grant that she's spoken out about, or grants that committee members may speak about in the future. I just want to be in a position to account to all of you as far as the dollars being spent by EPA. I can only assume that there will be funding that will be from that review that will be in accordance with the law.
So I'm going to go to
No, thank you.
Senator Schiff. Thanks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Zeldin, although California banned the installation of lead pipes in 1985, the average home in South Los Angeles is over 70 years old and more likely to contain corroded lead plumbing than other regions in the state. Lead in drinking water, particularly from old pipes and plumbing systems, is a significant public health threat,
No one has
especially for
ever been
children.
harmed by lead
Out of the
in
58
drinking
counties
water.
in the state of California, Fresno
You got
County
lead,
has one of the
not
largest numbers of children with high levels of lead in their blood.
No,
In
false.
2016, nearly 14% of children tested in one Fresno neighborhood had reported high lead levels. 25% of schools in Fresno reported finding lead coming from their drinking water fountains. 40 homes had lead levels above the federal limit. In October, the EPA announced new final regulations requiring drinking water systems across the country to identify and replace all lead pipes within 10 years. Will you continue the EPA's work to help local communities like those in Fresno and in South Los Angeles replace lead pipes, particularly in many of these communities that are historically underserved?
I'll look forward to that opportunity to work with you, Senator, on this issue.
Why is it an EPA expense or problem to do that? Why
The
isn't
EPA
that-
administers
There was
12.
Inflation Reduction Act money to do that. A lot of money, and Biden, of course, jumped all over it. But the lead in drinking water is just not an issue. The lead pipe's not an issue. It's, eating lead paint chips, bad. Swallowing lead jewelry, bad. Trace amounts of lead in drinking water, not a problem.
All right, let's hear some more.
Issues as part of EPA's geographic program designation. If successful, that would mean revenues that could be used to mitigate that environmental hazard in a very neglected part of the state. Will you pledge to consider adding the Salton Sea to one of these geographic programs?
Yes, Senator. I know from our conversation yesterday just how important this is to you. I look forward to getting more familiar about this issue, and that certainly can be my commitment as I sit here today. That if confirmed, I would welcome that opportunity to work with you on this issue and see what I can do to assist.
That's all I know about it.
Salton Sea was accidentally created.
Yes, accidentally
Let me
created.
address a third critical issue affecting the health and well-being of
drain the Salton Sea, Senator.
millions of Californians, and that is
Not
air
natural.
quality, not only in the aftermath of the ongoing wildfires, but also in the breadbasket of America. Unfortunately, we have some of the worst air quality in the nation, failing to meet federal health standards for both ozone and particulate pollution. This pollution directly impacts our families, our children, our communities. Last summer, residents of Fresno had just 10 days of healthy air, a stark reminder of the urgency of the situation.
Where are all the bodies?
EPA has long supported California's efforts to address this crisis
Where are the
through clean
bodies?
vehicle programs, regulatory actions, and strong enforcement. We have to continue this vital work, pushing for policies that protect public health and create a cleaner, healthier future for the San Joaquin Valley and all of California. Do you support investments like the ones that the EPA has made in the San Joaquin Valley
Breadbasket, because
to
we
improve the
dammed all the
quality
rivers
of air there?
in the west and shipped you the
Senator,
water.
to the maximum extent possible under the law that I, if confirmed as EPA administrator, can assist on this and all the other issues that you referenced here today. I would welcome that opportunity to be able to work with you. As far as specific funding commitments, I need to make sure that I'm following my obligations under the laws Congress sets out as to how funding should be appropriated, so that I can account to you afterwards. So moving forward, if there's any funding now and in the future that EPA has an obligation to distribute to help with this, I welcome that opportunity. It's possible that I might need to defer to Congress to be able to give me access to funding for investments in the future, if that's part of what you're referring to. Regardless, you have my commitment to work with you on this.
I feel like I can almost answer every question he gets. But
one of the things
look
that
forward to
I
working with
found
you.
most striking as
Everyone needs this book about air pollution, scare pollution, why and how to fix the EPA.
water and the competition between the cities and the farms over water, and I did. But what was more striking to me was just how many tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people in places like the Central Valley can't drink their own water. And here I'm not talking about lead, although the lead is a problem there. But the flooding of dairy waste ponds into water wells, the depletion of the aquifers resulting in manganese, there are just thousands of people told you can't drink your water, you can't bathe in your water. A lot of these communities don't have the resources to address it. And I would, if confirmed, I would want to work with you to do everything we can to make sure that everyone in the state of California and indeed the country has access to good, clean drinking water.
Yes, Senator, this is extremely important. No American should feel like a story they might hear about, read about of poverty in Iraq or Afghanistan. No American should feel like they're living in some third world country or some war-torn country. Every American should be able to access clean water, potable water, and that's something that I look forward to doing my part, if confirmed, to be able to work with you and everyone on the committee to ensure that we are delivering as a nation.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
So should Adam Schiff
well,
be
I'm
for
going
sending
to
that
ring
100
this.
billion gallons that gets flushed into the Pacific down to Southern California and San Joaquin Valley?
I think they've replaced Adam Schiff with like an AI robot version of Adam Schiff. Jim.
Yeah, I know. I just pulled a Jim myself. Yeah, I was wondering what happened to the Adam Schiff we all know and hate. Seems like a pretty reasonable person today.
Several
Wrong on
quick
stuff, but he's not
observations.
being a complete, he's not being a complete maniac. But
One thing that happened is it's not Trump before him or one of.
Well, that's true. That's true. All right.
Had access to you and had a conversation with you before you actually testified for the committee. I think that was definitely reflected in the tone and the substance that we saw here today. So I appreciate that. I know it's time consuming and difficult sometimes to get on everybody's schedule, but I think you did a magnificent job here. And so without further questions, I would like to thank you. And thank your family for being here and for your participation. Senators who wish to submit without written questions for the record have until 5 p.m. Tomorrow, Friday, January 17th, to do so. The nominees' responses to those questions for the record are due back to the committee no later than 9 a.m. on Tuesday, day after inauguration, January 21st. With that, I do look very much forward to helping to shepherd you. I think you've done an excellent job here today. You will be an excellent administrator to the EPA, and I fully expect that your confirmation will be very positive. Thank you very much, and everybody enjoy the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cool. All right. Well, yeah, we can remove that, which we just did.
Is Burgum still going?
No, I just checked. Burgum is done. So the hearings are finished. We can wrap it up. Actually, let's get some. Well, we can do a couple things here. We still have a couple clips from Burgum that we didn't get to. Maybe play one of them. I know it's already been a long afternoon for people, or long morning for everyone, but I want to play at least one of these videos because I brought it up before. And this is Burgum talking about oil, gas, and timber. This was happening while we were watching EPA, and everybody here is with us probably missed it. I think it's important, so let's give it a play.
That we've passed. Great. So you support the LWCF that we've passed in continuing to support those funds?
Some of those acronyms I'm less familiar with, so I'd look forward to learning more about them. But
okay. Well, we'll get you a question for the record because it's vitally important. We believe we think we broke through finally, and the reason why I'm asking this is because the lead up to the next question.
Okay.
You're for this very aggressive oil and lease strategy, I think, or maybe you're going to take this helm over, with a group of people and say we need to do more on the oil and gas. Part of our efforts have been to show that these federal lands are very important in an outdoor economy. And so how many areas that we've already leased for oil and gas that aren't being used, why don't we start there? Why don't we just start with those, the leases that are already there? Why don't we start with that?
Well, I think I would use the term that I was for aggressive. I've never stated that. I'm for following the law. In the current administration in North Dakota, for the first time since Harry Truman, the quarterly lease sales were not held as required by law. It didn't happen for 2 years. We ended up having to sue the federal government just to follow the law. So I think the starting place is for us to go back to follow the law on these. And then again, we always want to prioritize those areas that have the most resource opportunity for America with the least impact on lands that are important. And I think that's pretty simple formula to be able to figure that out, given the scale of the amount of public lands we have. We can do a lot more without touching or even being visible to any of the people that are concerned
So
about
I
land
don't-
use.
I don't so you would prioritize the existing leases?
I'm not sure if I understand the,
Juxtaposed to, this conversation, which we've had many times in this committee, let's expand more leases that, that we don't have right now. I'm sure the chairman would probably, we could get into a very long discussion here about Bears Ears, particularly I wasn't for expanding oil and gas leasing into Bears Ears. It's a beautiful protected area. I personally think that the outdoor economy is a juggernaut. I don't want offshore drilling off the coast of Washington. Why? I got a marine sanctuary. Why in God's name? I have a Cascadia
He said he'd follow
fault
the law,
line.
and the
I mean,
law
I
is
could
they
have
must balance
devastation
the
to an
quarterly.
economy that's paying dividends. Why would I want to do
Environmentalists
that?
have
So
never seen
I'm
a
just
piece of
saying,
land they didn't think was
one
safe.
of the things that would be helpful to hear from you is that you believe in prioritizing on federal land the leases that are already there, as opposed to now going and saying, okay, let's get a big map and open up all federal land to new leasing.
There's a
'Cause your
reason
point
those
about
locations
efficiency, yeah,
aren't
the
being
most
used
efficient thing
right
is
now. Just because a
go
lease
after what you
exists
already
doesn't
have.
mean it's viable.
well, I'm going to have to, before I can make an affirmative statement that I agree with you, I'd have to understand, because what I've seen in my time as governor is not that we have existing, but we're actually restricting legal access for development or timber or oil and gas or whatever on public lands today
Okay.
by illegally not holding the leases that should have been held. So I'm not even, I'm
Okay,
not,
we'll come,
All right. So, yeah, there we go. Remove it from here and then we'll get there. Yeah. So, I want to thank our a friend of mine who grabbed that clip for us. Steve, Sterling, and Linnea, I know that one of the concerns I think a lot of people on the climate realism side of things were concerned about with Doug Burgum. There's a lot of his policies that I think a lot of people who are in favor of responsible but aggressive energy exploration, there's a lot to like. There are also some concerns. Steve, I'll start with you. When you hear that response from Doug Burgum, is there anything about it that makes you either more optimistic or more pessimistic that we're going to have a good energy policy when it comes to public lands that are governed by Interior?
Well, I don't really pay too much attention to what he's saying now, because a lot of this is just all, for show. I think he's going to be fairly aggressive in, holding the lease sales and allowing the oil and gas industry to, do the exploration they need to do to make us energy dominant. I mean, that's why President Trump picked him. I don't, I don't think anything offshore is really going to happen anytime soon. But I think there's probably a lot of land that could be safely explored for drilling, and then drilling could be done. President Trump was elected on the drill baby drill platform. So I guess he can't say that at his confirmation hearing, but what he's going to be doing is implementing the president's policy. The voters voted for the president. The president is in charge of all these departments and cabinets, and senators want somehow for Burgum to commit to abandoning the president's policy. And of course, he can't do that. He's not going to do that, but he's just trying to get through the hearing. So I'm hoping that President Trump won the election. His policies get to rule, and it's up to his secretaries and cabinet heads to implement his policy. So
yeah.
My concern. Sorry.
No, you
go ahead, Linnea. You first.
My concern with Burgum is, one, he did not have to commit his state to net zero. He did not have to run around telling people that ESG is a good thing and that we're going to follow it in the state of North Dakota. He did not have to do that. He did that at the same time that states like Texas were standing up against that stuff and saying, no, go away, basically, to the people who were pushing for that. He's a major pushover when it comes to Chamber of Commerce stuff. He's a major pushover when it comes to the kind of globalist ESG net zero nonsense. I know people in his state are not very happy with him for some of his land grabs for carbon capture pipeline infrastructure. There's a lot of contention there, actually. So I'm not optimistic that he is on board, like in his heart, with the Trump plan, but I am vaguely optimistic that he's going to shut up and get in line, because that's the kind of person he seems to be. Like, he just goes with the flow, kind of. He's not a big thinker, it seems.
I guess I would I would note that before he was running for elections and taking money and wanting to appear greener than thou, I think he had higher aspirations than even a department head. He is now the cabinet, or will be likely the cabinet secretary under Trump. What I liked about his answer is he didn't say, no, I won't commit to not leasing. I won't do that. I will follow the law. And the law says you got to offer lease sales every 3 months, regardless of how many leases are outstanding and in the permitting process. You have to offer them. And he was very clear that Biden had violated the law over his term of office multiple times, certainly for the past 2 years. I'm hopeful that he will follow the law and get us back in the National Petroleum Reserve in Alaska, and back to ANWR, which was a law passed, finally opening up ANWR. Leases were offered, and Biden rescinded them, contrary to the law. So I think he's going to follow the law, and that means there will be more lease sales. Now, one of the key things is she keeps talking about, oh, you've already got these leases. Yeah, and you got a lot of permits in a pipeline that have been backed up under Biden.
Yeah.
There's an initial flurry of permits that were already going through and almost finished when Biden came in office, and he took credit for those. After that, though, he blocked them. And I'm hopeful that Burgum will move through that backlog.
Yeah. I think I get the impression here that, a lot of people think that, and especially people on the Hill, think that they can cut special deals with these cabinet secretaries separate and apart from what Trump's policies are. We have 3 branches of government, and the executive branch gets to, implement policies passed by Congress. And, Burgum serves at the president's pleasure, and he's got to implement Trump's policy. And he ought not have the degrees of freedom to make up his own policy. I passed around earlier on, at least on my X feed, this big article in the Washington Post today about how Doug Burgum wants to nationalize carbon capture. That is not Donald Trump's policy, as far as I know. I don't know how he's going to be able to do that. His his policy mandate is drill, baby, drill. And so, he may not like the word aggressive, but that's what he's got to be. That's the president's policy: be aggressive, drill, baby, drill.
Yeah,
and that's what he's gonna do.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're going to have one question from the audience, then I have a question for you guys, and then we're going to wrap it up. Linnea, you want to pop that one up?
Sure. This is from Energy Colonizer, who asks, what kinds of domestic big stages like cabinet approval hearings will these picks have to set a climate realist narrative after this? So will there be more opportunities for someone like Wright to, I guess, right the ship on, on where he stands on some of this stuff?
Well, I think the person that can make the most difference is Lee Zeldin, because Lee Zeldin has the rulemaking that to end all climate idiocy, and that's the endangerment finding. Yep. If Zeldin launches a redo of the endangerment finding and overturns that, then all this climate stuff sort of comes to an end. So I think that's the rest of these guys, what they could do is Burgum and Wright, they can talk up fossil fuels, do Trump's bidding in terms of reviewing all the IRA spending, clawing it back where it's been wrong, and not encouraging more of it. I think Chris Wright needs to learn a little bit more about the labs, and fusion and all this money that is wasted. These guys we need to shrink the government and stop wasting money on things that don't make any sense. Drill, baby, drill makes sense. Let's, ultimately we're going to judge this administration by what it does, not what it says. So I'm looking forward to, Lee Zeldin bringing EPA back down to earth, and, an Interior facilitating drill, baby, drill, and an Energy just kind of, containing the damage that's already been done.
That was one of the most positive aspects I thought of Zeldin.
Oops, Sterling got frozen there. So this gives me an opportunity to come in here and say, hold on, everyone. So yeah, my exit question is going to be, so yesterday we live streamed, had a watch party, more than 3,000 people watching that. We got about 3,000 people watching today. I want to thank our audience for coming in here and having fun with us at the watch party. That's super encouraging. But yesterday it was Chris Wright at the Department of Energy. Today it was Lee Zeldin at EPA and Doug Burgum for Interior. So a lot of coverage here. I would just want to ask, going around the panel here, what were your expectations coming into these hearings? And were those expectations met, exceeded, or not met? I'll start with Linnea.
Sure. My expectations were different for the different candidates, obviously. My expectation for Wright was that he was going to come in pretty well guns blazing, because I knew he was going to get the harshest treatment. And I thought that he would be a little bit more strong in his responses to the nonsense that he was being presented with. And unfortunately, he pretty much seemed to be towing the line on stuff that, being familiar with his work doesn't seem all that honest, which was kind of weird. So I was a bit disappointed in that. And then I also expected Zeldin to be a total lame pushover when it came to the climate questions, and he did way better than I was anticipating. So I've got a bit more confidence in him going forward here. I believe him when he says that he just wants to follow the law. And I think that there was kind of an unspoken thought behind that line, which is that when the law is changed to be more favorable to climate realism, that he will also follow that. Despite his, affirmation of some of the lines that we don't like to hear about climate change, it was still very encouraging to me. And then on Burgum, we only dipped into his a couple of times, a little bit. He's very boring. And it went, from what I saw, it went pretty much the way that I thought it was going to go, which is that all of his answers are very amicable. He doesn't seem to ruffle anybody's feathers ever. So that was pretty much what I expected.
Excellent. Sterling Burnett, what were your expectations coming in? Were they met, exceeded? Were you disappointed? What did you expect, and how did it work out for you?
I'd like to have seen, honestly, a bit more fireworks. I think Mark explained why that didn't happen. I hadn't thought of that. I thought Zeldin did better than I expected. I honestly thought he might be the worst of the three, and instead he was, to me, the most impressive. Because he knew how to handle these things, I think, better than some of the others. I would like to, follow up with what Steve said. Is it seems to me that, coming back to the endangerment finding, the most positive thing that I saw is that he said it allows. He kept hammering. It allows us. It doesn't mandate that we do. It doesn't mandate that we regulate. It allows us to if we find endangerment. So he could revisit that, and that undercuts. That's the foundation for all of the climate rules is the endangerment finding.
Right.
If you take that away, Interior, Energy, all of it goes away because it's built upon that. And so if he revisits that and he recognizes that it allows, but it does not require, and he decides that it's not endangerment, that would be a huge positive. And as far as Burgum, we didn't hear much of it. I was happy that he said, look, we're going to get back to following the law on leases, to the extent that he still supports all of the above, and brags about wind in North Dakota. That's troubling, but the one thing that Steve said was that they are Trump's appointees. And in Trump's first term, he was not averse, unlike Biden, who's once he got a person in office, they're there for life, for the life of his term. Trump was not averse to saying, you're out of here. You're not listening to me. Yeah. And if Burgum wants to stay, if Zeldin wants to stay, if Wright wants to stay, they better point the ship in Trump's direction. Because when they don't, he's going to call for their resignation and replacement.
That was always my favorite thing about Trump. I know a lot of Republicans didn't like it at all. They were really upset about it, but that was my favorite thing was Trump letting people go.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Steve, you can wrap it up for us.
Okay. Well, so I agree with everything that Linnea and Sterling said. The bottom line is these are Trump's appointees. He did not appoint them to make their own decisions. Trump is president. Trump will decide what happens. The only way these guys go off the reservation is if Trump gets too busy to monitor what they're doing. Hopefully that will not happen. We will help keep them honest and bring things to Trump's attention. And, I'm willing to give everybody a pass on all the mistakes they made. The answer is that, I would not have made. This is just what they said what they had to say to get confirmed. So we'll just, chalk it up to that and move on from here and hope that, President Trump's policies are implemented as he wants them. That's all we can hope for.
Yeah. And then I would just add to that. I think, everybody on this panel, everyone at the Heartland Institute and at Junk Science and Steve Malloy and all of our allies in the climate realist movement will be keeping a very close eye on each one of these federal departments to ensure that their very first move, we'll be able to tell right away. Steve, you'll be able to tell right away. I just have to look at Steve's face to see if he is, if he's upset or not. I talk to Steve about every week, and so I'll give the Steve smile-o-meter on the first 100 days of Trump's administration. But we will be looking closely, and we'll be able to tell, as I was saying, right away. Whether he is going to be on the right track, which means the climate realist, which means the American energy agenda. We'll be able to tell right away. There would be warning signs, flags all over the place if he's going to be squishy like a President Romney might be, like a President Bush was, to be honest. So we'll be here monitoring that. We'll be covering it every single week on the Climate Realism Show, which is usually on Fridays at 1 p.m. Eastern. We have done 2 exhausting special editions of the Climate Realism Show the last 2 days to do these watch parties. Steve has had so much fun. He will not stop texting me about how often he wants to do these sorts of things. So we do plan to do more watch parties when news warrants in the future. I want to thank again the climate hoax slayer at Junk Science, Steve Malloy, Linnea Lueken, and Sterling Burnett from the Heartland Institute. And also earlier on this stream, we had Craig Rucker. We had Gregory Wrightstone. We had Mark Morano. We had Donna Johnson. It was a fabulous time. And I also want to thank you, the audience, the people in the chat, and the people watching this even after the live stream is over. Thank you very much for wanting to get informed about these issues, for having a lot of fun with us. And please go to heartland.org to learn more about us. And there's a donate button there that would be really helpful. We're a 501c3 nonprofit organization, and we can survive and put out this kind of information just because of people like you. Thank you, and we hope to see you on Friday at 1 p.m. for the regular Climate Realism Show. Bye-bye.